Chapter 2693 Fighting a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. Chapter 2693 Fighting a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. 2693 Fighting a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. For an 8th heaven celestial king to speak as equals with a pseudo-heavenly venerate was slightly unimaginable. Ling Han really had a puffed-up opinion of himself, didn't he? But this pseudo-heavenly venerate of the Yun clan merely smiled slightly, and was not the slightest bit angered. He replied, "My name is Yun Haoyang." "Good name." Ling Han nodded. "Little guy, you are indeed considerably freakish, being able to suppress peak stage 9th heaven celestial kings when you yourself are only in the 8th heaven. Perhaps your glory can dazzle the ages. Even among those Lord 7th tier heavenly venerates from before, there are only a very few that can be considered your equal." Yun Haoyang made a very high assessment of Ling Han. "But you should understand that celestial kings are only celestial kings in the end. In front of a pseudo-heavenly venerate, they are merely trash." When he spoke this last line, his brilliance was on full display, emanating a radiance that was similar to a supreme divine sword, so intimidating that it was suffocating. "Then let us battle!" Ling Han was filled with a heroic spirit as he charged towards Yun Haoyang, sword in hand. "Humph, do you really think that you can defy all rules?" Yun Haoyang sneered. With a flash of his figure he, too, moved extraordinarily quickly. What was the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier? That was to use that unique power of heaven and earth to temper own body, and possess astonishing body art apart from regulations. In fact, this had even surpassed the level of regulations. When there came a day that not only could they use this power to temper their bodies, they could even extract and use it directly, they would then no longer be a pseudo-heavenly venerate, but rather a genuine heavenly venerate. A pseudo-heavenly venerate was an existence that lay between the celestial king tier and heavenly venerable tier. Ling Han had used void particle energy to temper his body, so his body was definitely stronger than that of the average pseudo-heavenly venerate, but with him being limited by his cultivation level, it was impossible that he could truly become a match for a pseudo-heavenly venerate. This was a qualitative difference. Yun Haoyang moved. He was even faster than Ling Han, and stronger as well. As he threw a punch, the force of his blow multiplied fold after fold, causing Ling Han's speed to rapidly decrease. Then, Ling Han stopped and retreated, speeding up, and pang! He was punched down to the ground, causing a loud bang to sound out from the ground as dust flew everywhere. Pung! Ling Han shot out from beneath the ground, his clothing covered with dirt and mud, as well as blood. Even his skin had cracked open. The attack of a pseudo-heavenly venerate was indeed domineering. Even if Ling Han had improved further since the time he had faced off against Yufeng, taking the strike of a pseudo-heavenly venerate head-on still caused him to take a slight loss. Thankfully, this was only a small loss. It had only caused him some flesh injury, and had not damaged his bones or touched his core at all. "And, indeed, amazing physique!" Yun Haoyang nodded. He was certain that even if his body had been tempered by that unique power of heaven and earth, he still could not compare to Ling Han's physique. The latter had to have cultivated some kind of secret technique, and that was why he could boost the toughness of his physique to this kind of height. Ling Han patted away the dirt that covered him, and said, "The power of a pseudo-heavenly venerate is indeed great, but if Brother Yun's battle prowess is only limited to this, he. This kind of battle prowess was indeed superior to Ling Han's, but it was impossible that Yun Haoyang could use this kind of battle prowess to suppress Ling Han completely. Then I shall show you the power of a pseudo-heavenly venerate." Yun Haoyang moved again. It was a very simple move, just a simple punch. However, Great Tao moved with his blow, and boosted with frightening power, it was a magnificent strike that would spark terror even in 9th heaven celestial kings. Ling Han moved sword in hand. Shwa! With a slash, this force was instantly cut by his sword, sliding past on either side of him. A heavenly venerate tool was indestructible. Good! Yun Haoyang showed a hint of admiration. As expected of a heavenly venerate tool. It is clear that it has only advanced into this threshold in terms of quality, and cannot be considered a genuine Heavenly Venerate tool yet, but it can break apart even my assault. It is truly extraordinary. He stretched out a hand to grab Ling Han. His power took form, solidifying into a giant grayish-golden hand. It was covered with seals, and also exuded an aura that surpassed regulations. This was a pseudo-heavenly venerating power that surpassed the Celestial King tier as the main force and supplementing it with supreme regulations, having battle prowess that was superior to the Celestial King tier, yet inferior to a true Heavenly Venerate. This precious tool, I shall gladly accept it. In your dreams! Ling Han laughed loudly, and channeled the 5 elements lightning technique. Pressing out with his left hand, he greeted the incoming assault of that giant grayish golden hand. Boom! Power exploded, creating boundless, wild waves of energy. Shio! Ling Han charged out. After using the Heavenly Venerate technique, his battle prowess had already touched the threshold of the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. At the very least, when Yun Haoyang was not using a Heavenly Venerate technique himself, it was definitely impossible for him to suppress Ling Han. Ling Han shot rapidly towards Yun Haoyang, slashing out with the Divine Demon sword in his hand, and turning his original defensive stance into an offensive one. Confinement! Yun Haoyang smiled slightly, stretching out a hand. He merely drew a circle gently with his hand. Instantly, Ling Han felt like the air all around him had solidified, forcefully stopping him. With a wave of his sword, shwa shwa shwa, the air was slashed apart. He charged out, but during this kind of lapse, Yun Haoyang had sent another palm strike his way. It was still that giant dark golden hand from before. In Yun Haoyang's hands, this kind of attack could be displayed casually. He was a real pseudo-heavenly venerate, so unleashing this kind of attack was naturally no big deal for him. However, for Ling Han, the burden was too heavy. Even if he had leaped into the 8th heaven, he could only channel the 5 elements lightning technique for around 100 times. How could he bear up to using it so frequently? Pun! Ling Han did not use the Heavenly Venerate technique again. Instantly, his palm pressed down, heavily smashing into the ground. After several exchanges, Ling Han had fallen into a complete advantage. He was not the slightest bit discouraged by this, because this was something he had long since expected. There was no way his present battle prowess had surpassed the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier. He merely wanted to use the other's hand to temper himself. Yun Haoyang, meanwhile, was slightly surprised. Though he had heard of how freakish Ling Han could be, he had not taken it to heart. After all, Ling Han merely possessed a Heavenly Venerate tool, and could attack to the point that 9th Heaven Celestial Kings were forced to flee in panic, but in front of him, he would not be able to gain much advantage. He couldn't even come close enough, so how could he be able to pose a threat to him? Ling Han was too tenacious, having a tough physique and an iron willpower. Even if he was at a disadvantage, he was still extremely calm. Clearly, he was someone who had fought many battles where the odds had been against him. No matter how Yun Haoyang tried to suppress him, Ling Han was always able to bounce back immediately. This kind of opponent was really a pest. Yun Haoyang had to become serious. Being able to hold on until now, you are truly amazing. You can be considered the top in Celestial King tier, Yun Haoyang said. However, if I use a Heavenly Venerate technique, just how many strikes will you be able to withstand? Ling Han threw out his fists. Just give it a try then. As you wish. Yun Haoyang's arms spread open. His left arm stretched out and straightened, raised level in front of his chest, while his right arm made the motion as if he was drawing a bow. 1. A golden light formed, and turned into an arrow aimed directly at Ling Han. The hair on the back of Ling Han's neck immediately stood on ends. He felt a suffocating feeling, as if he was faced with death. I'm not playing anymore. Ling Han hurriedly broke into a run. In the first place, his battle prowess was no match for a pseudo-heavenly venerate's, and now, with the pseudo-heavenly venerate unleashing a powerful attack, there was absolutely no possibility he could withstand it. If he took this blow head-on, even if he did not die, he would still be heavily injured. He really had to be a fool to actually do something like that. Yun Haoyang was slightly startled. He had not expected that with how domineering Ling Han had spoken just moments ago, he would actually turn around and directly run in the blink of an eye. He was being so forthright and frank, and did not even leave behind some parting lines. Thinking about it, it was reasonable. Wasn't it logical that an 8th heaven celestial king would avoid a battle with a pseudo-heavenly Venerate? If Ling Han confronted him forcefully, there would not be one person that would praise his courage if they knew about it. They would only call him a fool. With these thoughts, Yun Haoyang's grip loosened. Go! With a soft exclamation from him, the golden arrow shot out in hot pursuit of Ling Han. Chapter 2694 Embarrassment of the Yun Clan. Chapter 2694 Embarrassment of the Yun Clan. 2694 Embarrassment of the Yun Clan. Immediately moved to suppress Ling Han without wasting words. As long as Yun Haoyang did not unleash any powerful attacks, Ling Han would be able to handle him with his indestructible celestial king physique. At most, he would only sustain some minor injuries. However, when Yun Haoyang launched a powerful attack, Ling Han knew that he was outmatched, and would break into a run at the first instant. Ling Han had set his sights on Yun Haoyang, and would charge to the Yun clan to call out a challenge frequently. At times, the interval would be quite long as he would take over a dozen days before he paid another visit. That was because his injuries were slightly heavier than usual. At other times, he would charge back after just a few hours. That was because Yun Haoyang had taken too much time to release a powerful attack, so Ling Han managed to escape a long time ago. Fighting to and fro like this, half a year's time passed in the blink of an eye. Though Ling Han had not been able to penetrate the defenses of the Yun clan had also not managed to apprehend him. Furthermore, because of Ling Han, the members of the Yun clan did not dare to take a single step out their doors at all, fearing that he would suddenly intercept them and kill them. A dignified heavenly venerable force was actually forced to become cowards in their own clan? This made every single member of the Yun clan righteously furious. But who asked that Ling Han was really too freakish? His speed was not much lower than that of Yun Haoyang himself, and even Yun Haoyang could not do anything against him. Chasing Ling Han off was an easy task, but to suppress and capture Ling Han, that was just being delusional. It was not that Yun Haoyang had not pursued Ling Han before, but as long as he did not launch any great attacks, he would not be able to do anything to Ling Han. But if he did release a great attack, he would need time to prepare for it. This little bit of time was enough time for Ling Han to escape. A pseudo-heavenly Venerate had made a move, yet was still unable to take down an 8th heaven celestial king? When the news spread out, everyone was stunned. When Ling Han had exchanged blows with He Yufeng previously, he had still been unable to withstand a single blow. Though the fury of an ordinary man had still caused He Yufeng to bleed, the gap between them could not be any more obvious. Yet now, a whole half-year's time passed, and Ling Han was seen constantly provoking the Yun clan, but there was no sign of the Yun clan taking him down. To say that Yun Haoyang had been going easy on Ling Han, there was probably no one that would believe something so ridiculous, was there? This was too terrifying. He had just advanced by 1 cultivation level, and his battle prowess had multiplied many times over. However, they had overlooked the role played by the divine demon's sword. If Ling Han did not possess this heavenly venerate tool, he could only flee immediately when he encountered Yun Haoyang. He would not be qualified to oppose him at all. But even so, Ling Han was indeed very amazing, forcing a pseudo-heavenly venerate to the point that the latter could only stay on the defense in his clan. What other celestial king could actually do the same? However, Ling Han was not the slightest bit satisfied. He kept challenging Yun Haoyang, as if he was playing with fire. His motive was to make use of the latter to help him break through to the 9th heaven, but half a year had already passed, and he still did not have any improvement. He could not see any hope of breaking through at all. This made him slightly depressed, and agitated as well. Again. As usual, Ling Han went to the Yun clan to call out a challenge, and Yun Haoyang also accepted helplessly. "You are trying to use me to help you break through to the 9th heaven, right?" After fighting for so long, Yun Haoyang naturally discovered Ling Han's motives as well. Otherwise, it would be meaningless to have challenged him over and over again like this. A cold light flashed in his eyes. A celestial king actually dared to use him as a grindstone to polish himself. Just how arrogant was he? And just how far was he looking down on him to do such a thing? Ling Han broke into a grin. You found out? There is no way you can succeed, Yun Haoyang sneered. 9 nines return to 1, the pinnacle number of this world. Though I admit that you are indeed freakish, the threshold of the 9th heaven requires slow polishing and grounding. Spending over 1 billion to 10 billion years would be considered quick, and even an epoch would not be considered too long either. Furthermore, the higher one's natural talent, the more time would be needed to break through this barrier. You will not be able to last until then at all. My cultivation level is close to stabilizing completely. Once it's done, my battle prowess will surge many times over, and killing you then will be as easy as slaughtering a chicken. Chapter 2695 A Real Battle. Chapter 2695 A Real Battle. 2695 A Real Battle. He put some distance between himself and Ling Han, spread out both his hands to form a bow, and wang, a golden arrow was immediately formed. Even Yun Yanghao wasn't able to use this kind of powerful attack several times consecutively, as it involved the unique power of heaven and earth. He could only extract it to temper himself, but could not directly use it against the enemy. However, even if there was only a trace of it, just a little bit, this was a power that superseded the regulations. It would crush and destroy everything. Anyone whose strength was below a heavenly Venerate's wouldn't be able to block it. Ling Han's hair stood on ends immediately. His first reaction was to run away, but the urge to escape was forcefully suppressed by him. If he wanted to break through, he had to force himself into complete desperation, and then be reborn from the ashes, soaring into the sky. Come! He channeled the 9 transformations divine scroll and increased his power infinitely. Not running? Yun Haoyang was stunned at first, and then overjoyed. This was a heavenly Venerate technique he was using, and even the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate would not dare to confront it, but Ling Han, an 8th heaven celestial king, intended to take it head-on. This was truly bringing about his own destruction. However, this suited him. This time, really go meet your doom. Shio, Yun Haoyang loosened his hand and shot the golden arrow. Too fast. The arrow directly crushed the space with 2, leaving a ripple of regulations behind it, and appeared in front of Ling Han in a flash. Break! Ling Han threw his fist, and Z9-colored thunder was wrapped around his fist. With this punch, he channeled 2 heavenly Venerate techniques simultaneously, causing the flesh and blood of his entire arm to burst at the same time. Compared to when he had been at the 7th heaven, his physique had not improved. But as his cultivation level became higher, of course his battle prowess also became stronger, but this made the backlash become stronger as well, causing greater damage to his body. Pun! This punch hit the golden arrow, and endless brilliance flashed. At this moment, heaven and earth became pale due to it. Countless stars were shaken down, as if it were raining. Did Ling Han block the golden arrow? No! Even the combination of 2 heavenly Venerate techniques wasn't able to do it, and Ling Han's entire arm was currently only left with the skeleton, which instantly turned into countless pieces of broken bones, dispersing violently in all directions, while only part of the energy of the golden arrow was consumed, and it continued to shoot towards Ling Han. Ling Han let out a loud roar, circulating the Indestructible Heaven scroll to the extreme, and golden seals began appearing on his body one after another. Chapter 2696 9th Heaven. Chapter 2696 2696 9th Heaven. 2696 9th Heaven. Pun! The golden arrow landed on Ling Han, and suddenly the golden pattern dimmed immediately, their golden light disappearing in an instant. The defense formed by the Indestructible Heaven's scroll had already been pierced through. The golden arrow sank into Ling Han's body, but there was half that was still exposed, and its momentum was finally expended completely. Pa! The golden arrow trembled, instantly turning into bits of light. This was not because its energy had been exhausted, but rather because it had hit its target, and the martial intent contained within was beginning to unleash its might. Ling Han felt his mind shake and almost explode. This impact was too terrifying. It was like a heavenly Venerate had barged into his mind, and was attacking wildly within his mind. If it were not because Ling Han had experienced too many spiritual attacks in the Celestial King graveyard previously, this strike would have probably caused him to lose consciousness. Even so, it was still a hard time for him. You actually survived! Yun Haoyang was surprised. Ling Han had taken such a powerful attack head-on from him, yet he actually survived, and only sustained heavy injury. This brat's defense was beyond his expectations. However, since things had reached this point, Ling Han was definitely already spent. Complete elimination, he definitely could not leave this future trouble alive. Kill! Yun Haoyang descended from the skies. He was going to take this chance when Ling Han was at his utmost weakest to take the life of this young prodigy. Ling Han drummed up his remaining energy. Pun! Exerting power through his feet, he began to run madly, dashing forwards for the sake of his own life. His motive had already been attained. He had already pushed himself to the limits, and at present, all the blood vessels inside his body were still popping continuously. Death seemed to be close at hand, causing his nerves to be stretched tightly. He could feel it, breakthrough was already not too far away. As long as he digested his gains from this battle, he would definitely be able to advance to the pinnacle of the celestial path. Thus, what was the point in continuing the battle now? He escaped, and began to run for his life. Didn't you say you wouldn't be running? Yun Haoyang transmitted this message via divine sense, trying to provoke Ling Han into continuing the battle as he continued to pursue him from behind. How could Ling Han possibly fall for it? He, too, communicated through divine sense. Yun Haoyang, just wait. When I next appear, it will be your turn to flee. He said these words with surging pride, and these words were filled with absolute confidence. If he became a ninth heaven, he would definitely be able to match a pseudo-heavenly Venerate. If so, that is even more reason that I cannot leave you alive, Yun Haoyang declared coldly, a cold light flashing in his eyes. This time, no matter what corner of the world he had to chase him to, he was determined to kill Ling Han. Ling Han did not answer. He had already said all that he had to say. Next, it would be him coming back to kill all in his way after he had advanced into the ninth heaven. One fled, while the other pursued, and both of them were going all out. 10 days, 1 month, half a year. Time passed continuously. Yun Haoyang continued to pursue Ling Han, and a fierce battle broke out. However, Ling Han also drew the divine demon sword in response, and held no fear of the other party at all. Yet this time, it was Yun Haoyang that did not dare to use a powerful attack again, because once he used a powerful attack, it would give Ling Han a chance to escape. Thus, the two of them were embroiled in a fierce, drawn-out battle. One was determined to flee, while the other was determined to detain the former. Ling Han was not running in a straight path, but rather running circles around the Yun clan. However, after circling around for a year, he suddenly crashed into fog. This was very strange. Before this, he had not seen any kind of fog gather here at all. Little Han, follow Grandpa Dog's instructions. The large black dog's voice rang out inside Little Han's mind. Though the large black dog was very despicable, Ling Han had incomparable trust in him. When he heard him, he immediately walked according to the large black dog's instructions. Every 7 steps, advance, and turn after every 3 steps. It was extremely complex. Shio! Yun Haoyang also barged in. However, he immediately lost track of Ling Han. Nothing but an illusory formation, you think you can stop me like this? He sneered, and immediately waved his hands, unleashing the might of a pseudo-heavenly Venerate, wanting to sweep aside all the fog in a single move. He was a pseudo-heavenly Venerate, and had boundless might. With his overwhelming power, any kind of formation would be destroyed. However, though the fog rippled like the waves of a sea with this attack, it did not disperse. Yun Haoyang finally showed a hint of seriousness. On the other side, Ling Han soon walked out of the fog by following the large black dog's instructions, and soon saw the large black dog and Wally standing in front of him. Let's go. This formation would not be able to hold a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate down for long. The large black dog called out, looking extremely anxious. Ling Han nodded, and they left immediately. As expected, a loud boom was heard just a while later. A frightening wave of force surged out. Yun Haoyang already escaped, but he had also lost track of Ling Han. He couldn't help but roar furiously, his voice rumbling out like thunder, turning into a boundless ocean of flames. This was his fury taking solid form. Brat, how about it? Don't you still need Grandpa Dog to save you? The large black dog grinned proudly. Ling Han smiled and said, It was Wally who set up the formation, right? Wally nodded. He was the most honest. The large black dog humphed. That was also because Grandpa Dog asked him to find a formation, and Grandpa Dog was the one who personally set it up. Otherwise, you would still be hunted by now, brat. What idle time would you have to argue with Grandpa Dog now? Ling Han laughed loudly. He coughed up a great many bits of his internal organs with each laugh, yet he was completely unconcerned. Then, thank you. Of course. You are under Grandpa Dog's protection. The large black dog claimed all the credit without any reservations. He paused, and then asked Ling Han, Brat, you're not going to die, right? I'm not going to die, but I need a very long time to recover. Ling Han nodded. However, when I recover, it will be the day that the Yun clan have to bow their heads. Brat, are you certain you can break through to the 9th heaven? The large black dog was also very pleased. They sought out a place to heal their injuries. Yun Haoyang would definitely not give up, and would look everywhere for Ling Han to get rid of a future problem like him. Thus, they ran very far, and the farther they went, the higher the difficulty level for Yun Haoyang to find them would naturally be. A month later, they finally stopped, and entered into the depths of an ocean. Ling Han began to heal his injuries. He recovered very slowly. This time, it was injuries that had been inflicted from powerful attacks of a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. Furthermore, he had also missed the first instance to recover, causing his injuries to worsen considerably. Moreover, if it were not for the fact that he had been exposed to void particle energy a long time ago, and had developed a certain level of related understanding and resistance, he would probably have been killed with a single arrow. Ling Han slowly removed the foreign martial intent from within his body. This was a great test, but at the same time, it was also an opportunity, allowing him to feel the power of a heavenly venerate from an endlessly close distance. Time passed by quietly. 10 years, 100,000. In the blink of an eye, 210,000 years had passed. Ling Han had finally removed the foreign martial intent bit by bit. With a battle cry, he surged from the seabed right into the skies, and his aura completely unfurled. Instantly, winds and clouds raged, and thunder boomed loudly. The heavenly tribulation was coming. A 9th heaven great tribulation. Ling Han laughed. So what if it was a 9th heaven tribulation? He was completely unafraid. Come at me! Clang! The tribulation descended, and began to strike madly and explosively at him. Unfortunately, the power of a heavenly tribulation was limited. It was only slightly stronger than the 8th heaven tribulation that Ling Han had previously undergone. It was already no longer enough to threaten Ling Han. The heavenly tribulation boomed wildly, and countless bursts of lightning exploded on Ling Han's body, yet they were ultimately unable to penetrate the defense of his body. A day later, the heavenly tribulation withdrew helplessly. The dark clouds that filled the skies dispersed. 9 ribbons of iridescent light flashed around Ling Han, signifying that he had finally set foot on the pinnacle of the celestial path. Ling Han did not charge back to the Yun clan at the first opportunity. He had only just broken through to the 9th heaven, but there had not been much of a boost to his battle prowess. That was because the upper limits on his body art had just been lifted, but he had not begun to improve it yet. He descended back to the bottom of the sea, and extracted void particle energy to temper his body. Chapter 2697 The Return of the King. Chapter 2697 The Return of the King. 2697 The Return of the King. This was yet another long process. Heavenly Venerable Tier characters appeared in Ling Han's mind, which didn't mean anything to him, but could increase the efficiency of his stimulation of void particle energy. Even so, his progress could be seen as slow. After 30,000 years, Ling Han once again ended his seclusion and opened his eyes, and two beams of cold light illuminated heaven and earth, as if they could penetrate the whole flaming frost realm. Then, his eyes returned to normal, leaving behind only warm radiance, and his whole body's aura was completely suppressed, making him appear like an ordinary person. Returning to one's true self, the great accomplishment of cultivation level. Ling Han laughed loudly, stood up, and casually raised his arms. Boom! His devastating aura surged like a great river. Little Han, you are finally out! The large black dog jumped out. Grandpa Dog has been waiting until all the flowers have withered, and been sitting until his buttocks almost got calluses. Ling Han simply chuckled. Did the large black dog think that Ling Han wouldn't know because he was in seclusion? This damn dog was so flamboyant that it was impossible that he would stay still. He had to be wandering around. It just so happened that he hadn't gone out at this point in time. Vitality Index 14,574. Wally's eyes released a beam of green light as he was scanning Ling Han. Hiss, brat, your current strength is nearly as good as that of a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate, the large black dog said excitedly. This was amazing indeed, being a 9th Heaven Celestial King, and yet possessing the battle prowess of a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. If Ling Han was to become a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate, then wouldn't he be able to kill even a first-tier Heavenly Venerate? However, Ling Han knew that he wasn't that powerful himself. The reason was that despite seemingly being in the early stage of the 9th heaven, he had already reached the level of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate in terms of body art, and this wouldn't change even after he truly became a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. Therefore, what he could improve next was simply the power of regulations, and naturally the degree of improvement would be limited. Naturally, as his body was being tempered by void particle energy, his strength would also let him far exceed an overwhelming majority of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates. Fortunately, at least I can beat the crap out of a certain someone. Ling Han laughed. In terms of body art, he was only at the early stage of the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier, but because of void particle energy, his vitality index could be compared with that of a late-stage Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier, which was naturally enough for him to suppress Yun Haoyang. That's great, Grandpa Dog can't wait! The large black dog also shouted with excitement. Things such as looting clans were his favorite activity. They left the ocean and headed back towards the Yun clan for battle. More than 200,000 years had passed, and the Yun clan had long since returned to normal. At the beginning, they had been really worried that Ling Han would make a comeback, but after years of being cautious, Ling Han had never been seen to appear, so they had gradually let down their guard. Ling Han ought to be already dead. This was only normal. Wasn't it normal to die from serious injuries after being hit by a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate's powerful attack? Some Yun clan members had inquired Yun Haoyang regarding the matter, and after careful consideration, Yun Haoyang had also affirmed the conclusion that Ling Han ought to be already dead. At that time, Ling Han was already suffering from serious injuries, and in addition to being hunted down by Yun Haoyang, his injuries would continue to worsen, and the probability of dying would have been very high. Initially, Yun Haoyang hadn't dared to make such a conclusion, but after tens of thousands of years, there hadn't been any news regarding Ling Han, and thus even he had become certain that Ling Han had to be dead. Yun Haoyang felt it was quite unfortunate. Since Ling Han's physique was so strong, he had to have cultivated a certain heavenly venerate technique, which had now disappeared together with Ling Han's death. This made him feel that it was a pity. In the past, having been fiercely suppressed by Ling Han had made the Yun clan completely lose face. Therefore, Although Ling Han's body had not been found yet, having Yun Haoyang's personal affirmation that Ling Han had to be dead, they began to release the news that Ling Han had been killed by the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate of their clan in order to restore the reputation of the Yun clan. Just a mere 8th heaven celestial king, how could he possibly shake up the Yun clan? As soon as a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate makes a move, such a minor character will only be granted death. This is the consequence of angering the Yun clan. They bragged to their heart's content, completely forgetting the past when they had been blocked by Ling Han at their doorstep, and even the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate had been unable to do anything about it. However, history ultimately lay in the hands of the victors, and since Ling Han did not jump out to refute, many people gradually accepted the fact that Ling Han was dead. The current Yun clan was peaceful, a show of happiness and prosperity. As Ling Han had caused such a ruckus in the beginning, with the person himself being so legendary, it reached the point where some people would purposely come here to pay their respects and offer condolences. The Yun clan could not prohibit it at all, and as time passed, the place became a small town where many cultivators would come daily to commemorate the last battle of the supreme freak of his generation, Ling Han, who had been defeated at this place. When the trio including Ling Han had arrived, they were also taken aback by the sudden emergence of this small town located below the mountain, and became a little confused. What was going on? Let's check it out, Ling Han said. They changed their appearance slightly. Now that Ling Han had returned to his true self, there was actually no need for him to conceal himself. If it wasn't someone familiar looking, it would be impossible to connect him with his previous self. As for the large black dog, he transformed into a human form, a mighty man who was 7 feet tall, appearing quite formidable. It was just that his eyes were extremely vulgar. It was the essence of his character which could not be changed. Wally didn't have to change anything, as his face had never been revealed before. The 3 people entered the town, and found that it was really lively, with restaurants, gambling houses, and even brothels, and people would come and go like a stream. Come and see, this is a stone stained with Lord Ling Han's blood, someone shouted at the side of the road. He had set up a stall filled with many stones, which were indeed stained with red blood. This call immediately attracted the attention of many people on the road, and they all went to surround him one by one. Is it genuine? Someone inquired. There were too many people selling using the gimmick of Ling Han's relics, and it turned out that most of them were fake. Of course it's genuine. Haven't you sensed the powerful pressure emanating from the blood on the stone? The man who had set up the stall immediately said proudly. Although Lord Ling Han has fallen, he died at the hands of a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate after all, and thus has absolutely lived up to his reputation of being freakish. Just imagine, if you can inherit a trace of his cultivation from Lord Ling Han's ancient blood, you might be able to become the second Lord Ling Han in the future. Indeed, this statement wasn't false. A celestial king's blood contained the celestial king's martial intent, and by deduction, one could even probe into the secret of the celestial king's cultivation. A question remained. Was the blood on this stone really Ling Han's? The onlookers were excited by the person who had set up the stall. To become the second Ling Han, this was such an amazing temptation. How much? One by one, many were asking. 1,000,000 star stones, said the person who had set up the stall. Everyone was hesitant. 1,000,000 star stones wasn't a small figure. Most of them were just minor characters of the severing mundane tier. Seriously, it wasn't easy to fork out 1,000,000 star stones. At this moment, an abrupt voice suddenly interrupted. What, Lord Ling Han? He was just a piece of trash. Everyone became extremely annoyed. Those who would come here were people who had heard of Ling Han's legend, and regarded him as their idol. Now that someone actually belittled their idol, it naturally made them very angry. They all turned their heads to look, only to see that it was a young man dressed in fine clothes. One could tell he had come from a powerful force or family with a single glance. No matter what, that kind of arrogance couldn't be concealed. Who are you? How dare you slander Lord Ling Han? Someone said angrily. The young man in fine clothes gave a cold look, and he suddenly stretched out his hand to press against that man. Insolence, you dare to insult me, you must be tired of living. Chapter 2698 2698 Your grandpa is the one. Chapter 2698 2698 Your grandpa is the one. 2698 Your grandpa is the one. Heavenly Brilliance Tear! As soon as the young man in fine clothes made a move, everyone was shocked. Heavenly Brilliance to the corresponding level of martial arts in the celestial realm would be the ascending origin tier. This was indeed extremely strong, completely crushing the weaklings here. With just one move, the person who had spoken was seized by the young man in fine clothes. He gripped the other party's neck, and said lightly, "I didn't hear clearly what you said earlier. Can you repeat?" The man showed hesitation, but in the end he didn't dare to attempt being valiant, and said, "It's my fault for being blind as a bat and offending young master, please forgive me." This was a world of cultivators, where those with strength would be respected. Had he dared to attempt being valiant, then he would have died in vain if he had been killed. The young man in fine clothes laughed out loud, raised his hand, and threw the man. He took a step, and several Ling Han bloodstones on the ground shattered to pieces, which also proved that the stones were fake. Otherwise, had they truly been stained with the blood of a celestial king, they wouldn't have been so easily destroyed by a person of the ascending origin tier. So what of Ling Han? If I had been born 200,000 years earlier, I would have killed him with a single sweat of my hand, he said arrogantly. Everyone was angry, but didn't dare not speak out. They thought to themselves that Ling Han was merely a seventh heaven celestial king at that time, but he killed more than 10 celestial kings at the peak of ninth heaven in one battle, fought against the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate for half a year, and blocked the Yun clan so much so that no one dared to step out their doors. How domineering and powerful was this? What was a mere heavenly brilliance tier like this guy worth? If Lord Ling Han had not fallen, would you have dared to slander him like this? "Remember, my name is Pseudo-Heavenly," said the young man in fine clothes. "The future of the world will belong to me. One day, I will trample all the prodigies under my feet. People like Ji Wuming, heaven-born, and Du Shi can only look up to me." Everyone was speechless. This was too shameless indeed. His conceit practically soared to the skies. The large black dog couldn't bear it any longer, and said, "You snob! Have you devoured the courage of an immortal dragon to actually dare to boast so shamelessly?" Pseudo-Heavenly looked at the large black dog with an angry expression. "What kind of dog dares to act presumptuously in front of me?" The large black dog was furious. He hated people mentioning the word dog in front of him, as it was tantamount to cursing him face to face. He gave a howl, waved his paw, and swatted towards Pseudo-Heavenly. "You're courting death!" Pseudo-Heavenly sneered and raised his palm to fight back. He was of the heavenly brilliance tier, and the only person stronger than him in heaven and earth would be a celestial king. However, even in the flaming frost realm, a celestial king wasn't just anybody, and would not be so easily encountered. Pun! With one blow, Pseudo-Heavenly was immediately sent flying. Given his strength, he was certainly no match for the large black dog. In fact, the large black dog didn't even need to make a move. He could crush him into a puddle of blood with just a snort. However, the large black dog didn't want to reveal his identity for the time being, so Pseudo-Heavenly was flipped upside down with a slap, and his head was planted in the ground, so deep that half his body was embedded in it. Even so, there was a buzz of gasps all around. That person was someone at the heavenly brilliance tier, after all, and he was knocked over with a slap. Could it be that you are a celestial king? Everyone looked at the large black dog with admiration. Though Ling Han could see celestial kings all around him after he had arrived at the martial academy, so many that he was almost bored by it. In fact, the number of celestial kings was still low even in the flaming frost realm. It was just that place where Ling Han had stayed happened to be full of celestial kings, which gave the feeling that the number of celestial kings was exceptionally high. For the vast majority of people, the severing mundane tier was already unattainable, while an immortal palace tier could be regarded as a peerless elite, and an ascending origin tier would be an overlord of a region, capable of starting a sect and establishing a faction. How powerful was a celestial king tier? These were just minor characters of the severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier. Naturally, to see a celestial king with their own eyes was extremely exciting, so much that they were about to cry. "My lord, you have caused trouble!" A person approached from the street and said, "A few days ago, I saw with my own eyes a young master of the Yun clan accompanying this person, so the identity of this person must be extraordinary. My lord, you had best leave quickly." Hearing this, the people around inhaled sharply, showing an expression of great reverence. They didn't know Situtai-san, but they knew what the Yun clan symbolized. The clan was right on top of them, right? Who of those that came to the clan's territory would not know the power of the Yun clan? To have a relationship with the Yun clan was incredible. Not to mention Situtai-san's own background, as long as the Yun clan was willing to stand up for him, what celestial king could bear up to such fury? To speak of nothing else, Ling Han was already very powerful and freakish, right? Hadn't he still died here? The large black dog couldn't help being amused. He was not afraid of the Yun clan now, of course, and said smilingly, "So what about the Yun clan? As long as they dare to come, Grandpa, I will destroy them with one hand." The corners of everyone's mouth twitched. Situtai-san had been bragging before, but now the large black dog was even more able to talk nonsense. It was a pity that none of them dared to refute. "Why, you still don't believe it?" the large black dog barked. "I will sit here for the whole day today, and wait for the Yun clan to come." Sure enough, he sat down on the side, but one paw could not help but habitually stick up, trying to scratch his neck, and it was very hard to hold back the urge. Everyone didn't dare to persuade him anymore. This was a celestial king, so who would dare to talk too much in front of him? After a while, sure enough, someone from the Yun clan came. The Yun clan was located in the clouds, and they naturally descended from the sky. There were 2 people in total, both of whom were extremely handsome young men. When they saw Situtai-san planted in the ground, they showed anger. "Brother Tai-long, my brother had an accident in the territory of our Yun clan. I will definitely give you an explanation for this," said a young man who was dressed in green. The other person, who was dressed in black, nodded. "Of course, I believe Brother Alcone." That young man in green clothes was Yun Alcone. Not only were there many warriors who came to pay their respects to the sacred site of Ling Han's battle, there were also many disciples from the martial academy who were interested in it. They were all people who had seen how freakish Ling Han could be with their own eyes, and were very interested in the secret of Ling Han's power. When Ling Han was still alive, of course they didn't dare to do anything, but now that Ling Han was dead, they gained some ideas. Maybe they could find where Ling Han was buried and obtain everything that had once belonged to him. Therefore, Yun Alcong returned. The person dressed in black was named Situtai-long, and he was also a disciple of the martial academy. He was also a descendant of the Situ clan. The Situ clan was a heavenly venerable to noble clan, with an elder of their clan that was a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, and that background was even stronger than the Yun clans. "What does the culprit look like?" Yun Alcong asked the surrounding people. Everyone exchanged looks, a strange feeling rising up in their heart. It was weird to ask what the culprit looked like when the culprit was right there. Some of them stretched out their fingers and pointed at the large black dog. "He looks similar?" Yun Alcong didn't even think that the large black dog was the culprit, and thought that everyone was using the large black dog for comparison. "Your grandpa is the one," the large black dog declared proudly. He was actually someone who would bully the weak but tremble before the strong, so he was naturally completely unconcerned about Yun Alcong. Yun Alcong was stunned for a moment, and then burst into anger. "You're so arrogant, you beat someone, yet didn't run away, and you're still waiting here? Just how far are you looking down on the Yun clan? Do you think you are Ling Han?" Yun Alcong was furious. Now that Ling Han had caused such trouble in their clan, any average celestial king dared to come to their Yun clan and flaunt their arrogance. Chapter 2699 An Impostor. Chapter 2699 2699 an impostor. 2699 an impostor. Yun Alkong looked at the large black dog, and suddenly felt apprehensive. From his point of view, the person in front of him didn't have any strong aura circulating about him, but was just so perverse that he felt a chill down his spine. However, being able to defeat Situ Tai-sun, he would have to be a celestial king, right? Both of them were celestial kings, but he wasn't able to see through the depth of his opponent's strength. Could it be that the other party's cultivation level was actually higher than his own? What is your name? He decided to first test the large black dog's strength. I'm the Black King, said the large black dog loftily. Black King? Yun Alkong murmured under his breath, and started a frantic search in his mind, wondering whether he had previously heard of or seen someone with this name. After a round of searching, there was indeed someone named Black King in his memory, but none could match with this perverse man in front of him. Why aren't you prostrating and kneeling down in my presence? The large black dog demanded boldly. Yun Alkong felt apprehensive, but it was naturally impossible for him to be afraid of his opponent in his own territory. Did you think that every person was Ling Han? Sir, you are too arrogant, Yun Alkong said menacingly. This person was ignorant indeed. Didn't he know how powerful the Yun clan was? When I clean out your clan's treasure chamber, you will know how arrogant I am, the large black dog shouted, his eyes gleaming with greed in addition to the perverseness in his gaze. Yun Alkong was furious. This person actually had the guts to think of attacking their Yun clan treasure chamber? Situ Tai-long couldn't help laughing and said, Brother Alkong, it seems that your noble clan needs to start killing people, otherwise everyone will think that it's easy to bully the Yun clan. Yun Alkong nodded. Did most people think that the Yun clan had become weak because of the incident caused by Ling Han? Now any random celestial king would dare to walk all over him. This was really too insolent. Sir, allow me to test your strength. Yun Alkong took a step, and boom, his aura exploded. The large black dog obviously could suppress Yun Alkong with just one hand, but if he didn't make use of someone who could be ordered around, then would he still be him? Little Han, go on my behalf, he yelled at Ling Han. Pa! Ling Han kicked towards the large black dog, causing the large black dog to dash off hurriedly. Huh, you? Yun Alkong looked at Ling Han with a strange expression. This person's appearance was so familiar, but he couldn't recall whom he resembled at the moment. Hey, he looks a bit like the person who is already dead, Situ Tai-long said. Yun Alkong suddenly realized that this person did look a little like Ling Han, but obviously he didn't impersonate him very well, because Ling Han had a domineering aura, and even the sun couldn't suppress his splendor. However, the person in front of him had a subtle aura, and had no distinctive features. He was standing there like an ordinary person. Since Ling Han had been born and set the record for heaven-defying battle merits, he had also won the favor of countless young people, with all eagerness to pursue him and follow suit, so it wasn't surprising to see a person with appearance and temperament similar to Ling Han's. It was just that this person in front of him wasn't a good enough impersonation. Humph! I hated that person the most, and yet you insist on making yourself look like him. This is courting death, Yun Alkong said coldly. He once again raised his hand towards Ling Han to grab him. Pa! Ling Han waved his hand, and directed a slap at Yun Alkong from a distance. With his strength, was there any possibility for Yun Alkong to resist? Raising a hand, his palm landed, and the man collapsed. When Yun Alkong fell, a strange thought crossed his mind. Why had he collapsed like this again? There was a feeling of déjà vu about this. Situ Tai-long was shocked his strength was almost on the same level as Yun Alkong's. But Yun Alkong wasn't enough to be Ling Han's match for even one exchange, so far from it in fact that Yun Alkong fell with just a single strike launched from a distance. This was absolutely crushing strength. Who the hell are you? Being so powerful, and yet having to imitate someone, it was truly such a shame. Ling Han said evenly. Situ Tai-long scoffed. Ling Han was already dead. It couldn't be that the dignified Yun clan would release fake news. Sir, you are also an overlord yourself, so why impersonate a dead person? He asked. This was him stalling for time, as he just wasn't Ling Han's match, and could only wait for the Yun clan to send reinforcements. Ling Han chuckled, and looked at the large black dog. Why doesn't anyone believe me when I tell the truth? That's because you've been telling too many lies. The large black dog took the opportunity to speak in reprimand. Little Han, when one does bad things, heavens are watching, and there will be retribution, so you have to be respectful and courteous to Grandpa Dog, who is your great benefactor. Situ Tai-Long was trembling with anger. His younger brother was planted into the street like a tree, while his companion was knocked out by a single blow, and yet these two people were still teasing each other in front of him. This was too arrogant. As for the Yun clan, why hadn't anyone come? Shio, shio, shio. At this moment, 5 people descended from the sky, all showing off their powerful aura. This was the territory of the Yun clan, and they were the celestial kings of the Yun clan, so naturally there would be no need to conceal anything. These 5 people were all 8th heaven celestial kings, and moving together, they would just be able to take on a 9th heaven celestial king. Who's the man to have the impertinence to come to my Yun clan and cause trouble? A celestial king shouted, his sweeping gaze landing on Ling Han and the large black dog. His gaze focused upon Ling Han, and he just felt that this young man seemed very familiar. I'm here to collect a debt, Ling Han said lightly. Collecting a debt? Why was it so popular nowadays to come to Yun clan to collect debts? It was all because Ling Han had set a terrible example. He really wanted to dig him out of the ground and flog his corpse for 10,000 years. Situ Tai-Long folded his arms over his chest and said coldly. He said his name was Ling Han. Ling Han? The 5 8th heaven celestial kings all sneered. Indeed, the person in front of them did resemble Ling Han, but the difference was also obvious. And the most important thing was that Ling Han was already dead. How could a dead person still be standing here? Who the hell are you, and why did you come to Yun clan to cause trouble? A celestial king asked. Who gave you orders to do so? If asked to believe that a celestial king would come to the Yun clan to cause trouble, none of them would believe it. How could there be so many audacious people in the world? Don't you feel ashamed of causing trouble under a dead person's name? Ling Han couldn't help but find it funny. When did he die? I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. Once I suppress all of you, Yun Haoyang should come out, Ling Han said with a smile as he stretched out his hand to grab a celestial king. How dare you! The 5 8th heaven celestial kings acted together simultaneously to fight off Ling Han. Ling Han stretched open his palm. It was as if the sky was collapsing. The 5 celestial kings countered it together, but they couldn't block the strike, and pa, all of them collapsed. At the sight of this, the people around them couldn't help but gape. This was ridiculous. Those were actually 5 8th heaven celestial kings, but they were no match for Ling Han. A 9th heaven celestial king? Absolutely. They all gazed at Ling Han with admiration. He was one of the 9th heaven celestial kings, who stood at the highest peak of the celestial path. Who wouldn't admire him? Ling Han planted the 5 celestial kings upside down in the ground one by one. Brat, you have such a bad taste, the large black dog said. Ling Han looked at Situ Tai-Long and said, What should I do with you? Situ Tai-Long also looked at Ling Han and extended a finger that was trembling violently. Why, you really are Ling Han. You are not dead. Being so unbelievably strong, with appearance so similar to Ling Han's, and even behaving similarly, who else could he be if not Ling Han? The Yun clan had made a huge mistake. This bringer of calamity and freak wasn't dead at all. Chapter 2700 He is Ling Han. Chapter 2700 He is Ling Han. 2700 He is Ling Han. Moreover, there was also a difference in strength between weaker and stronger pseudo-heavenly venerates. When 10 celestial kings blocked one, then the one who was blocked would have been the weakest pseudo-heavenly venerate. Shio! At this moment, someone in the sky shot out an arrow, so fast that it looked like a stream of light. So what if he's a pseudo-heavenly venerate, this the Yun clan? A majestic voice which made everyone's blood bubble and boil sounded. An elite made a move, albeit not Yun Yanghao, but a celestial king at the peak of the ninth heaven. When these words fell, everyone in the Yun clan felt motivated. Yes, they were the Yun clan, after all. Even if a pseudo-heavenly Venerate attacked, they would be able to stop him by dispatching more ninth heaven celestial kings. Ling Han humphed, raised his other hand, and launched a strike towards the golden arrow. Pung! With the impact of a single punch, the golden arrow instantly shattered into countless flashes of light. If there wasn't a pseudo-heavenly Venerate to take action, then who could stop Ling Han? His right hand exerted force, and boom, the white-colored hand pressed down abruptly. Such copious power was not something that the 13 ninth heaven celestial kings could jointly fight against, and this instantly caused those celestial kings to collapse all over the ground. In this exchange of blows, 14 ninth heaven celestial kings were completely defeated. However, due to the eruption of his full strength, Ling Han was unable to completely control his own aura, and boom, 9 ribbons of iridescent light appeared on his body. Ninth heaven celestial king! Everyone in the Yun clan said in a trembling voice, as if they were in mourning. If Ling Han had really been a pseudo-heavenly Venerate, they wouldn't have been so shocked, but Ling Han's cultivation level was only the 9th heaven. This was really too terrifying. A 9th heaven celestial king had done what only a pseudo-heavenly Venerate was capable of doing. How freakish was that? And how frightening? Ling Han! Someone finally said a name. Naturally it had to be the catastrophe that had brought shame to the Yun clan. This guy wasn't dead, and had even advanced to the 9th heaven. As they had feared, Ling Han at the cultivation level of the 8th heaven was just about able to battle against a pseudo-heavenly Venerate, so when he had advanced to the 9th heaven, he would really possess the strength of a pseudo-heavenly Venerate. Why aren't you dead yet? Ling Han laughed. What you're asking is really too mediocre. If I am dead, then is the person standing here a ghost? Little Han, he's cursing you. On the sidelines, the large black dog added fuel to the fire. With a shake of his body, he transformed into a dog again. Grandpa Dog in this form is still the most handsome, he said shamelessly. The people of Yun clan were on the verge of despair. Yun Haoyang had taken action, but he still couldn't kill a Ling Han at the 8th heaven. Now that Ling Han had advanced to the 9th heaven, would there be anyone in the Yun clan who could stop him? Their Grand Elder was still in the realm battlefield, and wasn't able to withdraw from it at all. I really didn't expect that you would not only survive, but even go a step further. Yun Haoyang's deep voice rang out. Shio, he descended from the sky and landed with a single step, not showing any domineering behavior. Elder Hao! All the members of Yun clan immediately knelt on the ground, although there were those who were actually higher in seniority than Yun Haoyang among them. The strong would be respected. They once again regained confidence as they had a real pseudo-heavenly Venerate in their own clan, and therefore would definitely not lose to Ling Han. Ling Han smiled lightly. Were you thinking that it was obvious that I was not as powerful as you, and yet I still fought with you for such a long time, so I had to be an idiot, no? I have to say, you are indeed freakish to have broken through to the 9th heaven by using me. Yun Yanghao was deeply rueful. Which 9th heaven celestial king, heavenly Venerate, and pseudo-heavenly Venerate wouldn't spend countless years when overcoming this obstacle? This was the last and strongest obstruction of heaven and earth, and it required a lot of hard work to break through it. And Ling Han belonged to the most supreme freakish kind, and had successfully advanced with the help of a pseudo-heavenly Venerate, which made the latter feel inferior. Having said so much, do you want to fight or surrender? Ling Han shouted. Chapter 2701 Defeating a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. Chapter 2701 Defeating a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. 2701 Defeating a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. There is no one from the Yun clan that would surrender without a fight, Yun Haoyang stated evenly, but these words were powerful and resonating. Ling Han laughed loudly. Though the Yun clan's way of doing things is not impressive, you as an individual are just enough to be considered passable. Let's go all out in a battle then. Yun Haoyang's figure rose, directly soaring into the clouds. The present Ling Han's cultivation level had increased, so should the two battle, the force of the shock waves created would be terrifying. They definitely had to take their battle far from the Yun clan. Otherwise, with the impact of any single shock wave, the Yun clan would have to be rebuilt. With a bounce, Ling Han also shot into the skies. Boom! 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 The two of them did not waste time on speaking another word, and immediately erupted into a great battle. Under usual battle prowess, neither of them would be disadvantaged in their exchange of blows. But everyone knew that Yun Haoyang had lost, and it was a terrible loss at that. Just how great was the gap between Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable Tier and Celestial King Tier? This should have been a completely one-sided battle, but now, not only could he not suppress his opponent, they were even battling to a tie. Yun Haoyang released a battle cry, using various secret techniques casually. He was already standing at the pinnacle of the celestial path, and various regulations channeled according to his will. He plucked streaks of great Tao easily one after another, and they turned into various weapons that launched a fierce offensive on Ling Han. Ling Han was not afraid at all. He was also standing at the pinnacle of the celestial path. In terms of height, not only was he not inferior to Yun Haoyang, he would also not lose to a 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate either. This was already the limit in terms of regulations. You could extract regulations, and so would I. Who would be more afraid of whom? Countless stars fell, turning into innumerable shooting stars that streaked through the world. These were all star stones, and there were even some star stones that contained divine metal. After many years, there would definitely be countless people coming here to hunt for treasure. If they could obtain divine metal, that naturally would mean becoming rich overnight. But now, everyone could only flee in a panic. With so many stars dropping down from the skies, and there were slivers of the two great elites' martial intent wrapped around some of them, at that if one of them landed on a person, that person would definitely die immediately. Pun! Ling Han and Yun Haoyang exchanged a blow, and both of them were sent flying as far as 50 kilometers backwards. However, if one compared closely, they would discover that Ling Han actually retreated around 30 meters less than Yun Haoyang. This kind of advantage was practically negligible, but it was a clear sign that Ling Han's battle prowess was indeed stronger than Yun Haoyang's, even if it was just a little bit stronger. Yun Haoyang's expression was filled with shock and disbelief. He had already guessed that after Ling Han advanced into the 9th heaven, his battle prowess would possibly not be inferior to his own, but Ling Han's strength reaching this extent was something that he could not accept at all. He had actually been surpassed by a 9th heaven celestial king. It was not because of the Heavenly Venerate tool's strength, but rather because his battle prowess was outmatched, and it was indeed a pure suppression of strength. Shio! Using this momentum, Yun Haoyang retreated quickly, and then used the Heavenly Venerate technique. He extracted a sliver of the fundamental power of the Genesis world, and solidified it into a golden arrow. This was the strongest secret technique of the Yun clan. If it was used by the Grand Elder of the Yun clan, one arrow could kill a 2nd-tier Heavenly Venerate. Ling Han did not dodge, but rather went forwards to greet it head-on. However, he dared not be careless. Using the 5 elements lightning technique, he wrapped the lightning around his fists, and 9-colored lightning instantly flashed brightly. Go! Yun Haoyang shot the arrow. Shio! This arrow was indescribably fast. Pun! Ling Han threw a punch, which landed on the golden arrow. Instantly, the brilliant light burst like a firework. Even the stars that were very far away fell as well, completely incapable of bearing the wave of power created by the unleashed battle prowess of a pseudo-heavenly venerate. It should be known that there was an instant that the battle prowess of the two elites had soared to the height of the heavenly venerable tier after releasing this powerful attack. Just how terrifying was that? If this was in the celestial realm, it would not be condoned by the heaven and earth, and they would send lightning to strike the two of them down. Ling Han roared. His fighting spirit blazed, and he sped up towards Yun Haoyang, brandishing both fists in a flurry of punches. Pun 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 pun! His strikes rained down. Yun Haoyang was both angered and stunned. If Ling Han had drawn the divine demon sword, he would have willingly admitted defeat. That was because there was nothing to be aggrieved over upon having lost to a heavenly Venerate tool. But when both of them were fighting with their own individual strength, and he still lost to a ninth heaven, how could he endure such humiliation? Unfortunately, faced with that storm of blows from Ling Han, he was actually feeling strained. How was this possible? He was a pseudo-heavenly Venerate, who had had his body tempered by the fundamental power of the Genesis world, and had an amazing body art. For example, a ninth heaven celestial king could only launch 10,000 attacks in a single breath, yet he could deliver 100,000 attacks. Thus, even when power was equal on both sides, he could also use this kind of intensive round of attacks to suppress all celestial kings. But in Ling Han's case, he could deliver 100,001 attacks. Even though there was only one extra attack, his advantage would build up slowly over time, and ultimately form a qualitative change. Could you believe it? His body art, the body art of a pseudo-heavenly Venerate, was actually no match for Ling Han. This was natural. Before Ling Han had reached the Celestial King tier, he had already been able to extract void particle energy to temper his body, and judging from the breach of cultivation level, it had far surpassed Yun Haoyang. Moreover, void particle energy was stronger than that unique power of the dimension, which naturally meant that Ling Han's body art was slightly superior. Pun! 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 In a countless clash of blows, Yun Haoyang finally could no longer block Ling Han's fists, and they landed on him, forming a frightening impact. Impossible! Heavens! Seeing this scene, every member of the Yun clan could not believe it. There were some that were even grabbing their heads, falling to their knees and sobbing. Their pseudo-heavenly Venerate was going to lose, defeated by a ninth heaven celestial king. This was an extraordinary, extreme humiliation. The longer the battle continued, the more attacks Yun Haoyang would sustain. Fists landed on his face, body, and legs, causing his body to distort, and a great many grooves appeared. There was not the slightest bit of overstatement about this kind of battle. Every blow was a clash of absolute power. Whoever's speed and power could not catch up, the disadvantage would be immediately apparent, and would be endlessly compounded upon. If it was not for the fact that those below the Celestial King tier could not see the battle clearly at all, even mountain river tiers would be able to easily distinguish that it was only a matter of time for Yun Haoyang to suffer defeat. The Celestial Kings of the Yun clan seemed to have lost their souls. This was something that they could never accept. Yun Haoyang fought fiercely, and did not take a single step back. If he fled, Ling Han would only be slightly superior to him, and could not possibly stop him. Even if Ling Han drew the divine demon sword, that might just be barely enough. But if Yun Haoyang fought to the death without retreating like this, then it would be two elites meeting on a narrow path, and the stronger would come out on top. He continued to suffer injuries, and his injuries accumulated without end. By the time it reached a certain point, he finally lost. Pun! He dropped down from the skies, crashing heavily on the ground, and creating a huge pit where he landed. Elder Hao! The Celestial Kings of the Yun clan all rushed towards him, and when they discovered that while Yun Haoyang was very seriously injured, it did not threaten his life, so they finally sighed in relief. Ling Han also descended from the skies, his aura flooding out like a wave. Though every member of the Yun clan felt extreme hatred for Ling Han, none of them dared to make a sound as they were overwhelmed by his aura. They could only shiver in apprehension. Old Black, let's go and loot them, Ling Han said to the large black dog. Sure thing. The large black dog was practically bursting with glee. He had already waited countless years for this day to come. They entered into the Yun clan, and searched around in a grand manner. The only thing they didn't do was dig into the foundations. But no one from the Yun clan dared to stop them. In fact, they did not even dare to rebuke them, and could only watch helplessly as the most valuable possessions of the clan that had been accumulated over several epochs were all robbed. This boy's power has already formed, and there is no one that can stop him now. The Celestial Kings of the Yun clan all mused ruefully, and were even more filled with regret. Why had they stood on opposing sides to Ling Han before? Though this guy was the type to hold a grudge, he had never bullied others on his own volition. The only ones that could be blamed for this were themselves. Chapter 2702 Burst Cloud Volcano. Chapter 2702 Burst Cloud Volcano. 2702 Burst Cloud Volcano. The power of regulation here was extremely intense. The whole volcano was like countless ninth heaven celestial kings overlapping one another. Even Wally could not see through it, and discover the whereabouts of the Crimson Inferno Divine Flame Stone in that manner. They thus began their search on the mountain. This mountain was extremely shocking in size. There was crimson lava flowing everywhere on the ground, and there were only a pitifully few safe areas. Furthermore, even ninth heaven celestial kings would still face extreme pressure in the safe areas. The waves of flames rippled, and the slightest distraction could cause one to burn alive, turning into a ball of fire. If it was only that, they would just have to take more caution, but the problem here was that there were actually living creatures in such waves of lava. When Ling Han and company had traveled a stretch, they saw the lava splash towards them. They only thought that this was a natural phenomenon initially, and thought nothing of it. However, without walking too many steps, another spurt of lava was splashing towards them. They dodged again. "Fuck, what's going on here? Is there something behind the lava that is attacking me?" the large black dog shouted. This was as if a coincidence, but how could there be so many coincidences? He sent out a palm strike, and as the force of his strike landed, the lava suddenly exploded, and splashed out like the surface of water. And Ling Han immediately saw that there actually was a fish in the lava. It waved its tail, and another fountain of lava suddenly splashed towards Ling Han and the others. "Damn fish, Grandpa Dog is going to cook and eat you!" The large black dog was enraged. He was very wary of the lava, and did not dare directly stretch out a paw to touch it. Thus, he stimulated Great Tao, and wanted to use Great Tao as he would use his paw to pluck this fish out of the lava. However, when the hand formed from Great Tao grabbed out, it was immediately ignited, forcefully melting into a huge hole. Pa! The large fish dropped back into the lava, and with a wave of its tail, it immediately dived beneath the lava. It could not be seen or sensed any longer. The large black dog yowled in fury. It would always be him taking advantage of others, yet now he had been ambushed by a fish, and the latter even managed to escape. This naturally was extremely infuriating for him. Ling Han smiled. "It just swims around in flames, and you are actually planning to cook it?" The large black dog bared his teeth. This flaming fish was formed by the melding of the highest level of regulations of fire, so what would be the point of grilling it on fire? "No, it has angered me. No matter what, Grandpa Dog is determined to eat it." He no longer cared about the feasibility of this action. "When it comes out, let's see if we can capture it. I myself am also quite curious," Ling Han said. It was not strange that regulations had taken form. What was strange was that this fish seemed to have gained self-awareness. "Okay." The large black dog rubbed his paws together. He was sure that even a creature manifested from the highest level of regulations could only surrender helplessly if he worked together with Ling Han. What is that?" Ling Han looked into the distance, and saw that the lava that had originally been flowing slowly had become violent. A huge wave rose, and was sweeping towards them. Chapter 2703 Finding Du Shi. Chapter 2703 Finding Du Shi. 2703 Finding Du Shi. A wave of lava was rising, and then crashing towards them? Ling Han frowned. This lava had originally been flowing calmly. How could it possibly suddenly rise up in a wave? Previously it was a fish that had caused trouble, sweeping out the lava to splash towards them, yet now it was a wave that was assailing them. If Ling Han was told this was a natural phenomenon, he wouldn't believe it even if it killed him. "Let's retreat first." Ling Han grabbed Wally. Their figures rose and descended, escaping from the direction that the wave was attacking. Yet it seemed like the wave had eyes of its own. It actually switched directions, and continued to rush towards them. The large black dog wanted to evade again, but Ling Han shook his head. Don't dodge. Let's fight! If they rose up, the waves of heat intertwining in the air were actually even hotter than where there wasn't any lava. Boom! The wave of lava reached them. Now that it had gotten close enough, they could see that there were actually fishes moving around in the wave. This wave was actually caused by a great many fishes. Ling Han humphed and said, I knew that was the case. He clenched his hand into a fist and threw a punch at the wave. Pun! The frightening force of the punch surged forwards. This was a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable attack. The great wave immediately exploded into bits. There were at least 100 fire fishes inside, and they were all blasted into the skies. Some directly exploded into sparks, but the majority still fell back down, completely intact. Ling Han stretched out a hand again, and he instantly grabbed 3 fire fishes. He did not directly use his bare hand to grab them, because he could feel the waves of heat exuding from the fire fishes. They were hot enough to cause damage to even their defense. Ha ha, damn bug, just try and be arrogant again. The large black dog laughed loudly. Faced with that wave from before, even a peak stage 9th heaven celestial king could only flee in a panic because the attacks he delivered would not be able to do anything to this kind of fiery wave at all. His power would be directly melted and destroyed by the regulations of fire. But when a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate moved, the effects were immediately different. Pa pa pa! The fire fishes all fell back into the lava. They discovered that some of their companions had fallen into enemy hands, and immediately launched another assault. With a flick of their tails, they splashed out the crimson lava at Ling Han. Ling Han threw out another punch. Overwhelming power surged past, and ping, the lava was instantly sent flowing backwards. More than a dozen fire fish were crushed into bits. These fire fishes finally became afraid. The survivors quickly fled with a wave of their tails. What exactly is this thing? The large black dog approached to take a look. Ling Han was also studying them. These 3 fire fishes were indeed formed by regulations of fire. Ling Han could achieve that as well, only had to extract the regulations of fire, but it was much too difficult to make it so that they had intelligence. Probably only the heaven and earth had that kind of ability. Outrageously bold, he tried to swallow one of the fire fishes in a single gulp. After entering his stomach, it became a ball of fire, threatening to burn and melt all his organs with its heat. Ling Han forcefully suppressed it, using supreme might to grind out the regulations of fire bit by bit. He sighed, and refined one of the fire fishes, yet did not gain anything from it at all. Forget it. Grandpa Dog doesn't want to eat it. The large black dog shook his head, and took a few steps back. Ling Han destroyed the remaining 2 fire fishes. If it was just 1 or 2 of them, he naturally would have no fear, but if it was a whole school of fire fishes, even he would frown when numbers reached a certain extent. It was just like how a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate could be ganged up on by over 100 peak stage 9th heaven celestial kings. If he did not quickly charge out of the siege, his fate would also be death. This really is a dangerous place. Ling Han nodded. If it were not for the fact that he had Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable strength, or if it had been any other 9th heaven celestial king, they really could only have fled. And they had just entered the vicinity of the volcano. Who knew how many more dangers there lay within? They continued onwards, their advance not very fast. This place was filled with traps as well. Just when you clearly saw a rock protruding, it would immediately explode and spurt out boiling lava when you stepped on it, and no one could guard against that. Ling Han was still fine, but the large black dog had a much worse time, so it was always jumping around on 2 legs. In the first place, this volcano was shockingly huge, and with how their speed was restrained, they could only search a small area in a whole day. Naturally, they were not so lucky to just happen to come upon Du Shi and the others. Furthermore, it was not definite that the 3 of them would be moving around together. If it was just one of them, it would be even more difficult to find them. After a short period of rest, they continued their search on the next day. 3 days, 4 days. They searched endlessly, exploring this volcano bit by bit, But after over a dozen days, they had still only covered around 1% of the whole area, and found nothing. They were very patient. Exploring this kind of dangerous location needed extreme caution in the first place. There were not just fire fishes here. There were also other random creatures, like fire crabs, fire scorpions, and fire snakes. They were all formed from regulations of fire. Though they themselves were very weak, they had reached the pinnacle in terms of regulations. Even when a peak stage 9th Heaven Celestial King attacked them, they could possibly kill their enemy yet wound themselves severely in the process. Still, in front of Ling Han, a celestial king who possessed power at the level of the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier, they were all trash. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. Ling Han and company had also explored around 1/6 of the total area here, but still could not find any clues. Another 2 days later. Practically at the same time, Ling Han and the large black dog pricked their ears, while Wally looked towards their left, 2 rays of green light shooting from his eyes. Very quickly, they saw a person shooting over from a distance, but he was not running directly towards them. Clearly, he was not running over just because he had discovered the 3 of them. He naturally could not run on a straight course. The floating rocks here had absolutely no pattern, so he was running on a serpentine course. "Du Shi!" Ling Han exclaimed, slightly surprised. There had been no trace of him even after they had been searching for half a year, but they had now found him effortlessly. However, he quickly frowned. Du Shi was not alone. There was a chain of people that were in hot pursuit of him. He was being hunted. Ling Han's eyes focused, and his killing intent involuntarily blazed wildly. Among the people who were hunting down Du Shi, he recognized one of them. The Azure Ghost Celestial King, the big boss of Ghost King's city at the Celestial King Graveyard. He was actually here. Previously, when Zhou Heng had swept through the Celestial King Graveyard, he had not found Desolate Moon, and those 9th Heaven Celestial Kings had long since disappeared. Yet now, the Azure Ghost Celestial King had actually appeared here. What did that mean? It was extremely possible that after Desolate Moon and those 9th Heaven Celestial Kings left the Celestial King Graveyard, they had gone into hiding in this volcano. This place was covered by supreme regulations, so if a heavenly Venerate did not come personally, it was impossible that they could see through to what was hidden beneath the cover of lava here. Furthermore, this was a dangerous place for others, but if you had tens of thousands of 9th Heaven Celestial Kings, how could it be that their combined force was still not enough to deal with those fire fish, fire scorpions, and so on? After so many years passing, Desolate Moon had probably long since completed his mission, and the Azure Ghost Celestial King and the others had all advanced to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. Otherwise, with Du Shi's strength, how could it be possible that he would be so terribly pursued by over a dozen Celestial Kings? "Brother Du!" Ling Han shouted, and communicated with Du Shi via divine sense. "Ling Han!" Du Shi was both stunned and delighted. He had not expected that he would encounter Ling Han here. However, he did not run in the direction of Ling Han. Instead, he took a turn, and communicated with him via divine sense as well. "These people are all influenced by hysteria, and have lost their minds. However, their strength is astonishing, and they have already become Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates. Return immediately to the Martial Academy, and bring the news back. I will try my best to draw them away." Chapter 2704 The Azure Ghost Celestial King App. Chapter 2704 The Azure Ghost Celestial King App. 2704 The Azure Ghost Celestial King App. With a tap of his foot, Ling Han stepped on the air. Pun! His whole person shot out, descending. Tong! He landed, and did not distinguish where he was at all. He directly dropped into the lava, and instantly created a splash of lava that was several hundred meters tall. Practically this whole area of lava had been splashed out from the impact. This commotion was so great that Du Shi and the others couldn't help but turn to look at him. When they discovered that this person was actually Ling Han, Du Shi was instantly dumbfounded. How could it be Ling Han? How could he possibly have such great speed? Why had he run over? Even if he was loyal, that was not the right way to show it. Ling Han smiled slightly. Brother Du, you ran too quickly, and made it very tiring for me to chase after you. Du Shi could only gape, and did not know what to say in response. Yet those pseudo-heavenly venerates that had pursued him would not just stand blankly there. It was true that they were only left with the instincts to battle, but this also meant that they could completely ignore anything surprising. Xiao, xiao, xiao! They all charged towards Du Shi. Du Shi wanted to flee, but it was already too late. He could only take it head-on. He circled his hands, and he unleashed his full power with a loud shout. Pung! A heavy bang rang out, and Du Shi was instantly sent flying. Just when it looked like he was about to fall into the lava, a figure flashed. Ling Han had long darted out, catching the back of his robes just in time. Ling Han, leave me be. Run, it is more important to report the news. Du Shi uttered, coughing up blood. Having survived after sustaining a blow that was practically the combined power of so many pseudo-heavenly venerates, he was indeed deserving of his reputation as one of the big shots of the martial academy, an overlord of ninth heaven. Ling Han smiled slightly. Brother Du, just rest on the side, and see how I will kill all enemies in my way. He placed Du Shi on a floating rock, and then turned to look towards those pseudo-heavenly venerates. These pseudo-heavenly venerates showed no respect. To say nothing of the fact that Ling Han was only in the ninth heaven, even if they were facing a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, they would still continue their charge without the slightest hesitation. Thus they all moved. Xiao, xiao, xiao. Du Shi could no longer bring himself to watch. It was clear that death was inevitable for Ling Han, and with the serious injuries that Du Shi had now sustained, he, too, would not be able to escape. He felt great regret. He feared that he would have to disappoint Mu and the others. Shwa! A sword light flashed past, dazzling the skies, and also causing everything else to fade with its brilliance. Du Shi couldn't help but narrow his eyes, and when he opened them again, he could see that 7 out of the 10 pseudo-heavenly venerates had actually already fallen. Either their heads were severed, or they had been cut in half. Ling Han had killed 7 pseudo-heavenly venerates with a single strike? No matter how weak these pseudo-heavenly venerates were, they were still pseudo-heavenly venerates. They were stronger than even the strongest 9th heaven celestial king. A light flashed through Du Shi's mind, and he exclaimed, You have broken through to the 9th heaven! Aside from this, there was no other possible explanation. Since Ling Han had already started killing, he naturally would not continue to hold back at all. He continued his charge, and he soon killed the other 3 pseudo-heavenly venerates as well. However, after the battle, his face was also extremely flushed, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. How could having 10 pseudo-heavenly venerates attacking him at the same time be just a game? Chapter 2705 Rescue. Chapter 2705 2705 Rescue. 2705 Rescue. This was also because these pseudo-heavenly venerates lacked intelligence, or they would not have clashed head-on with Ling Han, but chosen to adopt a moving-about strategy as well as mutually supported each other. While the strength of such 10 people might still not suppress Ling Han, it would at least allow them to stay undefeated. But now, 10 great pseudo-heavenly venerates were slain as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, and the only price was the mouthful of blood Ling Han spat out. Brother Ling, you really are extraordinary! Previously, Du Shi had always called Ling Han by his name as he himself was at the 9th heaven, while Ling Han was only at the 8th heaven. However, since Han was similarly at the 9th heaven now, Du Shi had completely acknowledged Ling Han as an existence of the same level. Moreover, Ling Han's strength far exceeded his own even though helped by the divine demon's sword. Ling Han's strength could not be denied. Ling Han chuckled, and put away the divine demon's sword. Brother Du, what's going on? Ling Han asked. Du Shi's expression became solemn. Mu and the others are still trapped in the mountain. We have to hurry and rescue them. He paused, and then smacked his forehead. My head's all muddled because of the urgency. Let me start from the beginning. The matter was very simple. More than 200,000 years ago, the three of them came here for a training trip, attempting to find an opportunity for breakthrough. After tens of thousands of years of bloody battles, they had gotten some inspiration, but there were still some deficiencies. During this period, they had also met some people, who fought with them together in battles. That was until 100,000 years ago, when they accidentally discovered an ancient cave, and took the risk to venture inside. Unfortunately, the outcome was that not only did they not find any natural treasures, they poked a hornet's nest. Inside, there were countless pseudo-heavenly venerates in seclusion, and under the order of a mysterious person, many pseudo-heavenly venerates were awakened, and proceeded to completely besiege them. Fortunately, Shiyi and the others had made a lot of preparations before they had come here to train. They even possessed heavenly venerable tier defensive treasures, but still couldn't kill their opponents to escape from the siege. This hardship lasted for 100,000 years, and they had almost exhausted the heavenly venerable tier treasures. They had no choice but to forcefully break through the encirclement. It was obviously unrealistic for everyone to escape together. Since Shiyi was the fastest, the others covered for him so he could break through the siege, hoping that he could escape to the martial academy, and bring the powerful heavenly venerate here to flatten this place and rescue them while they were at it. Ling Han nodded and said, "Where is the exact location?" Shiyi pressed a finger onto Ling Han, and transmitted to him the entire route which he had taken to escape. Ling Han thought for a while. "Brother Du, you should rush back to the martial academy to report the news. I'll think of a way to rescue Mu and the others. No matter how bad is the situation, I will delay them for a while until the arrival of reinforcements." Ling Han didn't commit to taking care of everything, because he knew better if Desolate Moon were to bring out all the ninth heaven celestial kings, there ought to be tens of thousands of pseudo-heavenly venerates hidden in the volcano. With so many pseudo-heavenly venerates attacking together, even a second-tier heavenly venerate might not be able to handle it. Ling Han couldn't be sure, because he had no idea how powerful the battle prowess of a second-tier heavenly venerate could be. "Brother Ling," Shiyi objected instinctively. How could he let Ling Han fall into danger? "You should go to the martial academy to report the news, and I will go back and fight side by side with Mu and the others." "Which one of us is stronger?" Ling Han said with a smile. Shiyi opened his mouth, but was at a loss for words. After a while, he nodded. "Brother Ling, you must be cautious, don't put yourself in danger. I will definitely come back as soon as possible," he said with a serious expression. "All right." Ling Han nodded. Shiyi glanced at Ling Han again, took a deep breath, and set out. It wasn't appropriate to remain in this place for a long time, as it was already extremely dangerous in the first place. Should there be another wave of pursuers, he would definitely be finished. Ling Han went back first to meet up with the large black dog and Wally. "What, you are going to save those people?" The large black dog jumped up immediately after hearing this. "Brat, don't think that you can run amok fearlessly just because you are impressive, awesome, and strong. That's tens of thousands of pseudo-heavenly venerates. If everyone throws a punch, you will probably be beaten flat even if you have successfully cultivated the indestructible divine metal physique. Tens of thousands of pseudo-heavenly venerate. This was something that was impossible to appear in the celestial realm, and the large black dog could not imagine how powerful this force would be. Ling Han smiled. "Don't worry, I won't act recklessly. I will play it by ear." The large black dog tried to persuade him again, but Ling Han just wouldn't listen. "Damn dog, I heard from Shiyi that there might be Crimson Inferno Divine Flame Stone in that cave." The large black dog immediately stopped persuading. Crimson Inferno Divine Flame Stone was the key to whether they could achieve cultivation of the indestructible divine metal physique, so he really had no way to refuse. "You and Wally leave first," Ling Han said. Even if he didn't mention it, the large black dog didn't plan on staying here, and this was the case for Wally as well. The latter had always positioned himself as one meant for an analytical type of battle, and when it came to activities such as combat, he had never wanted to participate in them. Ling Han set off and walked towards the depths of the volcano. With the guidance of Du Shi's route, he naturally didn't have to take any deviating paths. It only took a day when he came to the place, and saw a hole in the mountain wall where lava was flowing down, covering most of it. If one did not observe carefully, one would definitely not be able to find it. Ling Han channeled the Indestructible Heaven's scroll, strode in, and the lava hit his body, all of it blocked by the golden seals, unable to touch his body. Inside this cave, there was crimson magma flowing everywhere, and filled with supreme regulations of fire. There wasn't even any breathable air. Although Ling Han no longer needed to breathe air, due to habit, he still felt a little uncomfortable. There was no need to worry about the issue of lighting. The flowing of magma in this place illuminated the surroundings brightly. Ling Han strode forward. The cave was eerily quiet, with only the sound of magma flowing, which was very faint. There were many protruding stones on the wall of the cave, some of which were very sharp, with magma attached to them. If one was to get scratched by these, it was likely to pierce the body, and supreme regulations of fire would be injected, which would instantly put to death even a ninth heaven celestial king. It wasn't only on the wall of the cave, but also on the ground, which was even more terrifying. If one was to step on them, the whole person might just be reduced to ashes in an instant. Ling Han didn't dare to be arrogant. After all, he had yet to achieve cultivation of the indestructible divine metal physique, and even if his body was to be like divine metal, it might also be burned and melted away. This was originally a place where divine metal could be melted. He moved forward cautiously, and suddenly came to a wide clearing after walking for a while. Once again, he saw a familiar scene. On the spacious flat ground, there lay a number of giant eggs, surrounded by rays of black light. This place was actually extremely hot, but seeing these gigantic eggs actually caused a cold chill to rise up in one's body. As expected, Desolate Moon actually brought those celestial kings here, and continued to communicate with Hysteria, whose whereabouts were still unknown, while transmitting great power. Mu and others were not found here. Looking at these giant eggs, Ling Han thought of a risky idea. With the power of the divine demon's sword, could it cut open the giant egg, and send the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate inside it to hell? Now that these Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate were in a state of seclusion, and lacked the ability to fight back, even hundreds of millions of them would just be like trash, let alone tens of thousands. With this thought in mind, he could bear it no longer. He took out the divine demon's sword, came up to a giant egg, and slashed it with the sword without hesitation. Pooh! Previously, he had not been able to break this giant egg no matter what he tried, yet now it had been sliced up so easily with a strike of the divine demon's sword. Chapter 2706 2706 Great Destruction. Chapter 2706 2706 Great Destruction. 2706 Great Destruction. Boom! A larger number of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates were attacking madly, wanting to rip apart this entire canyon. Fortunately, though the mountain rocks could not withstand the violent force of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tears, they seemed to have a life of their own. Very quickly, they would grow out again, and their recovery speed was extremely quick. Precisely because of this, Mu and company managed to avert disaster, and defend themselves for countless years. Ling Han! Seeing that the person who had rushed in was actually Ling Han, Mu and Kinyu both exclaimed. This was too unexpected. Hey guys, Ling Han said with a chuckle, waving a hand in greeting. Now is not the time for you guys to reminisce, someone said. He had a wine gourd in hand, which was spraying out green light. This light was very amazing, being capable of even blocking the attack of a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. Only then did Mu and Kinyu come back to their senses. They hurriedly joined the ranks of defense against the invasion of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates. Ling Han glanced at them. With him, there were a total of 8 people here. Only one of them was a woman, and from Du Shi's memories, he knew that her name was Lu Zian. These 7 people were all peak stage 9th heaven celestial kings, their evolution index either 11 or 12. They had come here so that they could obtain a trigger for their breakthrough to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. Otherwise, even if they possessed heavenly venerable tier treasures, they could not possibly have lasted this long. Unfortunately, the treasures in their possession were not heavenly venerate tools, after all. There would ultimately come a time when they would be exhausted completely, and then they would be overwhelmed by the battle prowess of the pseudo-heavenly venerates. "What are you looking at? Move!" one of them shouted. If it had not been to help Ling Han come in, they would not have had to release such powerful attacks, which meant that they were now extremely strained. This man's name was Du Ba. Ling Han chuckled. "You should be more polite to your savior." Savior? Du Ba was close to madness. As Ling Han arrived, he brought over 100 pseudo-heavenly venerates with him, causing the pressure on them to multiply a good many times over. What kind of savior was this? Yet Amu's heart jolted. "You've encountered Du Shiyi?" Chapter 2707 2707 Last-minute preparations? Chapter 2707 2707 Last-minute preparations? 2707 Last-minute preparations? Ling Han nodded. "Brother Du has already returned to the Martial Academy to report the news." When these words fell, everyone sighed in relief. Good. They could hold on for a few more years, and they would definitely manage to succeed. They had already stayed on defense here for 100,000 years, so continuing to defend for a few more years should be no problem. With the help of the terrain here, there was actually not much difference if there were 7 or 70 pseudo-heavenly venerates besieging them here. That was because the attacks that they could deliver were limited, and were only so many. At the mouth of the canyon, the number of pseudo-heavenly venerates that could attack at the same time was around 10. This also exerted a powerful pressure on them, causing great strain on Amu and the others. Thankfully, they were not using their own power to resist. Instead, they were using heavenly venerable tier treasures. Thus, as long as these treasures could still be used, they would be able to continue holding on. None of these were real heavenly venerate tools, but had rather been forged by heavenly venerates. Because devouring metal was limited in amount, how could it possibly be bestowed on their juniors? Ling Han did not move, but rather began searching in the canyon. According to Du Shi's memories, he had vaguely glimpsed the existence of Crimson Inferno Divine Flame Stone. After all, they had been staying here for 100,000 years. Even if they had been fighting all this time, there would have somehow been that little bit of time where they could observe the surroundings here. Ling Han was searching. If there really was Crimson Inferno Divine Flame Stone, he would immediately cultivate the Indestructible Divine Metal Physique to perfection. By then, he would be able to turn their defensive stance into an offensive stance, and charge into that group of pseudo-heavenly venerates with his own power, eliminating all his enemies. "What are you standing around for? Come and give us a hand!" Another celestial king shouted at Ling Han. His name was Liang Taiming. "Hold on." Ling Han's eyes searched his surroundings. If he did not find the Crimson Inferno Divine Flame Stone, he could only flee once this line of defense was broken. With the combined force of over 100 pseudo-heavenly venerates, even if they were of the weakest level, they still weren't something that he could match. Du Ba, Liang Taiming, and the others were almost maddened with fury. If it was not for the fact that they could not free themselves now, they would definitely give Ling Han a harsh beating now. Even Qin Yu and Amu were slightly displeased. "At present, all of us are in the same boat. You are going too far." Ling Han did not explain. Even if he did, these people probably wouldn't believe him, either. For a 9th heaven celestial king to be able to eliminate about 100 pseudo-heavenly venerates, wasn't that the stuff of fantasies? Ling Han had to find the Crimson Inferno Divine Flame Stone first. After a search, his eyes paused on a groove on the mountain wall. There should have been a stone here before, but it had been removed. The marks were still very new. "Who removed the stone here?" Ling Han asked. No one answered him. "Just what are you here for? Brother Amu?" Ling Han looked towards Amu. Amu had initially not wanted to reply, but having Ling Han call him out directly, there was nothing he could do about it. He answered, "It is with Brother Zhuge." Brother Zhuge's name was Zhuge Xianming. Ling Han already knew who each of them was from Du Shi's memories. He turned to look towards Zhuge Xianming. Brother Zhuge, please hand that stone over to me. It will be very useful for me. Scram! Zhuge Xianming was furious. You keep giving all sorts of excuses when we ask you to defend against the attacks. Now, what are you planning? Ling Han shook his head. Sorry for this, then. I have no time to explain now. You guys will know in the future. He moved directly, and grabbed out at Zhuge Xianming. You traitor, could it be that you are a spy? Zhuge Xianming also countered with full force, meeting Ling Han's movement with his own attack. However, what other ninth heaven celestial king was capable of resisting Ling Han? Even a super freak at peak stage ninth heaven, with an evolution index that reached 12, could not, unless he, too, could use the fundamental power of the Genesis world to temper himself like Ling Han. Pung! With a single blow, Zhuge Xianming was throwing up blood from the impact, his expression incredibly dispirited. You! Everyone was outraged. Even King Yu and AMU were no exception. Ling Han had really gone too far. However, they were immediately shocked. He had injured Zhuge Xianming with a single strike. Could it be that this was a pseudo-heavenly Venerate? Ling Han tossed the divine demon sword over to King Yu. I'll lend this to you for a while. King Yu was startled. He knew that this was a real heavenly Venerate tool. With the help of this item, it would be child's play for him to kill peak stage 9th heaven celestial kings. Even if it came to resistance against a pseudo-heavenly Venerate, he would gain a considerable amount of confidence. Ling Han had previously acted completely like he had been here to muck around, yet now he had lent him his precious tool. This clearly was one of their own. Shwa! Can you raise the sword and delivered a sweep? A cold light shot into the skies, bearing boundless might. With how powerful a heavenly Venerate tool was, even a pseudo-heavenly Venerate would have to evade, what more when these pseudo-heavenly Venerates were at the weakest level. Surround them and halt the attack. Desolate Moon's voice rang out. He was personally overseeing things here, commanding the battle, determined to seize Ling Han and kill him. Without instruction, these pseudo-heavenly Venerates were just a pile of loose sand. Even if they had an advantage in numbers, they would still be fighting on their own, and they could not make full use of their advantage in numbers. However, it was different if there was someone commanding them. Their power would soar immediately. The pressure on King Yu and the others instantly increased many times over, so heavy that they were close to losing all hope. But they were all supreme prodigies. Faced with this kind of pressure, they would only become even calmer and more collected. Perhaps, this was the trigger that could allow them to attain a breakthrough, and they might suddenly sense that unique power of the Flaming Frost realm. Of course, even if they broke through to the pseudo-heavenly Venerable tier, it would not be of much use. That was because one would not have any qualitative change in battle prowess when one first broke through to the pseudo-heavenly Venerable tier. No matter what, one would have to boost their body art to the same height as regulations. Then, with the combined force of body art and regulations, their battle prowess would more than double. For example, these pseudo-heavenly Venerates in front of them belonged to the weakest level, but they were still stronger than any ninth heaven celestial king. The power of a pseudo-heavenly Venerate could only be evident with the passing of time. Ling Han did not care about anything else. He grabbed the spatial god tool that Zhuge Xianming possessed, and he soon found a red stone with a sweep of his divine sense. Crimson Inferno Divine Flame Stone. Ha! Ling Han took out the stone, and then stuffed the spatial celestial tool back into Zhuge Xianming's robes. Meanwhile, he walked to the side. He was going to cultivate the indestructible divine metal physique right here, right now. Come! He exclaimed lightly. With a wave of his hands, a large pile of natural treasures appeared on the ground. With the guidance of his hands, treasures flew towards him one after another. The objects here were very mixed. There were celestial medicines that were epochs old as well as dead waters from the underworld and a shell that had been shed by a ninth heaven divine tortoise, and Ling Han grabbed them one after another. He absorbed them into his body, and began refining them. The commotion caused by this was rather loud, causing Qin Yu and the others to turn around repeatedly to see what was happening. Strange expressions appeared on all their faces. Are you making last-minute preparations here? Meanwhile, Zhuge Xianming inwardly said, if Ling Han really can do something worthwhile, then on the basis that Ling Han is trying to save all of us, I will bear with this. Otherwise, I will definitely make Ling Han know that I am definitely not one to stand for humiliation. Time was slowly passing by, and the pressure on AMU and the others was also increasing gradually. With Desolate Moon's instructions, even if there were only 10 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates that could attack at the same time, he could fully unleash every single person's battle prowess to the fullest. Furthermore, with the endless barrage of spiritual attacks, they were close to the verge of collapse. The fact that they could still continue was merely because they were all supreme prodigies, so their willpower was many times stronger than the ordinary person's. Still, there would ultimately be a limit to their willpower, and they were close to reaching this limit. Chapter 2708 Indestructible Divine Metal Physique. Chapter 2708 Indestructible Divine Metal Physique. 2708 Indestructible Divine Metal Physique. AMU and the others had all reached their limit. Originally, Desolate Moon had not been concerned about them at all. That was why he had only sent out a few Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates to besiege them. Killing them sooner or later had been no issue at all. But now that his conspiracy had been ruined by Ling Han, this naturally made him extremely furious. How could he be satisfied without tearing Ling Han to pieces? With his command, the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates finally unleashed their true battle prowess. AMU and the others were forced to retreat. Some were wounded, blood spraying out and shattered bones glistening eerily. Yet those Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates did not show any change in expression, and were merely loyally executing the command that they had been issued. Ling Han, are you done yet? AMU shouted out loudly. He knew that Ling Han had already been able to kill peak stage 9th heaven celestial kings when he had been only at the 8th heaven. Though it was possible by depending on the help of a heavenly venerate tool, it was extremely possible that he could have gained battle prowess of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable Tir now that he had advanced to the 9th heaven, being able to defeat Zhuge Xianming with a single move. Now Ling Han would become their only hope. Just a while longer. Ling Han's hands danced, continuously absorbing the ingredients laid out on the ground. There were still 5 more to go. We can't hold on for even another instant. Du Ba roared. Ling Han sighed, and attached the remaining ingredients to himself. Then, with a move, he threw a punch towards those Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates. Pun! Not only was his battle prowess at the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable Tir, he had definitely surpassed these weak versions as well. With a single punch added to the unleashed force from the treasures of AMU and the others, this instantly became a frightening battle prowess, pushing those Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates back again. Sword, come! Ling Han cried lightly, and made a grabbing motion in the direction of the Divine Demon's sword. Shio! The Divine Demon's sword left Qin Yu's hand on its own, shooting towards Ling Han. Haha, let's battle! He moved, brandishing his sword. The 9 Transformations Divine Scroll was already unleashed, causing his attack to become incredibly harsh and powerful. Kill him! Kill him! Desolate Moon screamed from outside. Having his business ruined by Ling Han twice filled him with extreme hatred for the latter. 10 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates attacked, their power incomparably heavy. Yet Ling Han shot out like an arrowhead, meeting them all by himself. Pun pun pun! These attacks all landed on Ling Han, shaking him so badly that his body was trembling. However, with him as the main force of attack, AMU and the others finally regained their footing, and managed to maintain their defense. They were both pleasantly surprised and worried. Who would have imagined that a 9th heaven celestial king would actually be capable of fighting a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates, and could even surpass the latter in terms of battle prowess at that? They were all super geniuses, but compared with Ling Han, just how large was the gap between them? But it was clearly impossible that Ling Han was a match for 10 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates. He was blasted to the point that his body was trembling madly. Moreover, even if Ling Han could manage to kill these 10 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates, there were still over 90 other Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates standing behind them. Their only hope was that Ling Han could last for a while longer, right until the elites from the Martial Academy arrived. Pun pun pun! Countless attacks landed on Ling Han, but Ling Han did not take even a single step back. If this was any other time, he would absolutely not be so rash and take on such attacks head-on. However, he was presently cultivating the indestructible divine metal physique. It was only that he had not succeeded. Originally, he would have needed time to slowly cultivate it to perfection, but there was no time for that now. Then he would just have to use the roughest and most direct method. He would use the attacks of these pseudo-heavenly venerates to temper his indestructible divine metal physique. But the problem now was that with his physique sustaining the attacks of so many pseudo-heavenly venerate, how was he going to survive that? Very quickly, Ling Han began to throw up blood, his skin cracking, and revealing the white of his bones. He looked extremely terrible. "Exert more force! Just a bit more!" Desolate Moon howled from outside, his eyes already bloodshot. "A hideous monster that dares not reveal himself, what are you shouting around for?" Lu Zian couldn't help but rebuke. Desolate Moon sneered. "Once this brat is dead, you all will have to die with him as well. It would be better for you to think of what to make your last words now. Humph, the Martial Academy will soon get the news, and there will soon be a second-tier Heavenly Venerate, or even a third-tier Heavenly Venerate that will arrive. You had best think of how to make your escape." AMU and the others were unwilling to show weakness as well. With Ling Han holding on alone like this, they could also recover some of their vitality, so their confidence naturally returned. "That is enough time to slaughter all of you," Desolate Moon declared coldly. It was definite that this mission had failed. He, too, had to think of some way to return to Hysteria's world, and find a chance for him to start back from the beginning. He continued to issue commands, and the pseudo-heavenly venerates would take turns in the offensive, 10 in a group, continuing to maintain an absolute high pressure on Ling Han. Furthermore, these pseudo-heavenly venerates all had no fear of death or injury. Using their injuries to exchange for injuring their enemies, or even taking down their enemy with them. Just how terrifying was that? Fortunately, Ling Han still had the divine demon sword in hand, and was also helped by the unique terrain here. Otherwise, if over 100 of them attacked him together, even he would very soon be crushed into bits. Faster! Faster! Ling Han thought fervently. Under the violent barrage of attacks, his body was also completely loosened up, and because he was feeling a strong sense of danger, the rate of his absorption of energy greatly increased. On the surface of his skin, the 5 ingredients were rapidly shrinking in size. They were all being absorbed by him. When these objects had all disappeared, Ling Han released a loud battle cry, and actually surged right into the ranks of those pseudo-heavenly venerates. "He's fucking crazy!" AMU and the others were all dumbfounded. It should be known that the fact that they could last this long was completely because the pseudo-heavenly venerates had not been able to fully make use of their advantage in numbers. But with Ling Han now jumping headfirst into their ranks, had he become muddle-headed in fever, or was he already just giving up entirely? Yet Desolate Moon was overjoyed. He hurriedly issued commands, and made adjustments to the military formation of the pseudo-heavenly venerates. He only left behind 3 pseudo-heavenly venerates to seal off the canyon, while the others were all targeting Ling Han. The person he hated the most was Ling Han. Furthermore, once he killed Ling Han, wouldn't the remaining kids be easily dealt with? Die! Over 100 pseudo-heavenly venerates were enough to unleash their might all at once. Pa pa pa! The barrage of attacks continued, every single attack fierce and domineering. Ling Han was hit endlessly. So what if he had the indestructible Celestial King physique? Very soon, he had become completely bloody. In fact, not even his shape could be distinguished any longer. Pure power of regulation could no longer wound him, but all pseudo-heavenly venerates had been tempered by that unique power of the realm. In terms of quality, this was comparable to the fundamental power of the Genesis world, so their destructive power was incredibly frightening. Hence, When around 100 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates attacked at the same time, that really was instantly fatal. Ling Han was beaten horribly, his blood and flesh gone in an instant. His bones were also cracked and broken, as if he was made from paper. Ha ha! Desolate Moon laughed loudly. He had finally gotten his revenge. Just how many years had he borne this hatred for? Pun pun pun! Broken bones were endlessly flying from Ling Han, and he was very quickly only left with his head. The final blow. A hint of cruelty flashed through Desolate Moon's eyes. To kill a super freak, personally, gave him great pleasure. Boom! A Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate was the first to land a hit. His fist landed on the skull, yet a golden light surged out, turning into a screen that blocked this blow from him. What on earth is going on? Desolate Moon gaped wide. Could it be that Ling Han could still turn the situation around when he was already in such dire straits? In front of his eyes that were filled with absolute disbelief, golden light surged continuously from Ling Han's skull, forming his body, and when the golden light solidified, it formed his bones one after another. They were all formed from incredibly mysterious seals. Blood and flesh rapidly regrew on Ling Han's face, and his black hair grew out again, reaching his waist. His hair was still flickering with a crystalline luster. Ling Han broke into a grin. Thanks! Indestructible Divine Metal Physique, Success. Chapter 2709 All Killed. Chapter 2709 All Killed. 2709 All Killed. In only an instant, all of Ling Han's injuries were healed. Indestructible Divine Metal Physique was not only as tough as Divine Metal, it also had the indestructible trait of Divine Metal, having extremely strong recovery ability. Why you? Desolate Moon looked at Ling Han in shock. He was about to lose his mind. How could anyone have this kind of recovery ability? This was too terrifying, wasn't it? Then, he gritted his teeth. Even if you have recovered, so what? With so many Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates here, just how many times will you be able to recover? Once is enough, Ling Han stated calmly. He waved the Divine Demon Sword, and began his counterattack. Pun pun pun! The Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate's battle prowess was still great, blasting him in all directions, but he did not bleed this time. Instead, grooves appeared on his body one after another. A Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate would definitely only produce a groove should he blast Divine Metal. The depth of the groove would depend on the amount of force. But if they really wanted to damage Divine Metal, they could only use the fundamental power of the Genesis world. In other words, it would at least have to be the attack of a first-tier Heavenly Venerate to be capable of damaging Divine Metal. Ling Han only shook his body, and those grooves on his body immediately became even again. He broke into a grin. So what if there were around 100 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates? Unless the number of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates had reached a maximum limit that could turn him into a meat patty with a single strike, surpassing the tough level of Divine Metal. In that case, he definitely would die. But 100 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates? It wasn't enough. It was time for him to counterattack. With a battle cry, Ling Han swept out with the Divine Demon Sword. There was nothing it could not destroy, at least, it was not something that could be matched by the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. Pooh! A Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate died immediately. And Ling Han also paid a price for it. Having over 100 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates attack him caused a great many grooves to appear on his body, but with the recovery of his physique, they rapidly healed. Ling Han laughed loudly, and charged out again. Pooh pu pu. One strike after another, and he killed Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates like he was slicing grass. Strictly speaking, these Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates were only puppets, so how high could their battle prowess be? Desolate Moon commanded them from the sidelines, but he could only adjust their military formation on a wider scale, establishing their tactics. How could he possibly micromanage every single attack? Moreover, battle would change in an instant. These were Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates fighting, but he himself was only a 9th Heaven Celestial King, so how could he possibly catch up with them? One after another, the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates collapsed, and the number very soon surpassed 50. Desolate Moon was panicking. From the look of things, it would not be too long before Ling Han eliminated all these Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates. Just what kind of freak was this? AMU and the others were also dumbfounded as well, their eyes staring blankly. They could not believe this at all. A ninth heaven celestial king being capable of having pseudo-heavenly venerable tier battle prowess was already inconceivable enough, breaking the iron rules of cultivation. But Ling Han was even more domineering now. In his hands, pseudo-heavenly venerates were just like weeds that could be cut at any time. Was this really a person who was at the same cultivation level as them? How could Ling Han be so strong? It should be known that they, too, were super freaks that had evolution index reaching 12, so why was the gap between them so wide? This actually was not because they were not freakish enough, but rather that they were not as lucky as Ling Han. If they, too, could be tempered by void particle energy now, and also had a heavenly venerate tool, they probably would not be too inferior to Ling Han. And from this, it was evident that once Ling Han truly advanced to the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, or became a second-tier heavenly venerate, his advantage would disappear completely. All of them would have been tempered by the fundamental power of the Genesis world, or would have grasped one of the 6 fundamental powers of the Genesis world, aside from that unique power of the Flaming Frost realm. Then, there would be absolutely no difference among them. Ultimately, the most important deciding factor would be their individual ability. This thought floated through Ling Han's mind, but he exercised no mercy at all when he attacked. Very quickly, another dozen pseudo-heavenly venerates collapsed. And the more pseudo-heavenly venerates that collapsed, the fewer the attacks he had to sustain. Naturally, fewer injuries would then be inflicted on him, and these injuries would be lighter. Desolate Moon gritted his teeth, and turned to flee. If he still stayed, it would be his turn to be eliminated when Ling Han took out all the pseudo-heavenly venerates on the scene. Desolate Moon was only a 9th heaven celestial king. How could he oppose a pseudo-heavenly venerate? Yet he had forgotten that Ling Han was actually a 9th heaven celestial king as well. The problem here was there anyone who would still consider Ling Han a 9th heaven celestial king? Ling Han laughed loudly. With a burst of force, pang, he streaked out. Though there were a great many pseudo-heavenly venerates trying to stop him, Ling Han ignored them completely. Underneath the mad barrage of several dozen attacks, he had already charged out, heading directly for Desolate Moon. Desolate Moon turned to take a look, and his face involuntarily became livid. There were still 40+ pseudo-heavenly venerates now, and they actually couldn't even stop Ling Han. This was natural. With a precious tool cutting a path for him, how could they block him? Ling Han stretched out a hand to grab Desolate Moon. "You can't die so easily! I will capture and drag you back to the Martial Academy, in honor of Shaoing Xiong. Don't underestimate me!" Desolate Moon humphed, and sent a spiritual attack towards Ling Han. Yet Ling Han was completely unaffected. The hand that he had stretched out was steady, without the slightest sliver of a tremor. Previously, he only had to hide himself in the celestial guest residence, and would not be affected by the black chi. In other words, divine metal could effectively cut off these spiritual attacks. Then, now that he had successfully cultivated the indestructible divine metal physique, how could it be that he would not have this kind of immunity? His palm descended. There was absolutely no way Desolate Moon could dodge this. How could a 9th heaven celestial king possibly be any match for pseudo-heavenly venerable tier battle prowess? Ling Han captured Desolate Moon, and sealed off the latter's cultivation level before he threw him into a spatial god tool. Ling Han feared that Desolate Moon would be able to exude black chi, and contaminate the women, so he naturally could not send him into the celestial guest residence. Once Desolate Moon vanished, the remaining pseudo-heavenly venerates immediately became puzzled. Their master was gone, and they were like kites which had their lines cut, left with only the most primitive instincts of slaughter and violence. Ling Han drew the divine demon's sword once more. Shwa, shwa, shwa. Sword light blazed hotly, and the remaining pseudo-heavenly venerates very quickly all collapsed as well. Only then did he withdraw his sword, and strode towards the canyon. Amu and the others were all gaping in shock, their eyes wide. They could only stare at Ling Han in astonishment. They had completely no idea what to say. Was he really a ninth heaven celestial king, just like them? What is it? Ling Han asked smilingly. I am more stunned, and am still trying my best to digest my shock, Amu answered. These were honest words, but it could also be seen how open-minded he was. Otherwise, there was absolutely no way he could say these words now. Everyone nodded. There should be no preceding ninth heaven celestial king like this. Brother Ling, you asked for the Crimson Inferno Divine Flame Stone just now. Was it to cultivate the final stage of your secret technique? Lu Xian asked, her beautiful eyes sparkling. She herself was a freak whose evolution index had reached 12, and it was destined that she would become a heavenly venerate one day. There was already no one that was worthy of her admiration, yet now she suddenly felt just how insignificant she was. Ling Han was a true freak. He alone was 100 times more amazing than all of them added together. She felt her heart beat fiercely, her cheeks dyed red. Some string in her heart seemed to have been strummed. Ling Han nodded. They had already seen this, so there was no meaning in denying it any further. Moreover, when one had reached the heights that he had, there was no need to hide a matter like having cultivated a heavenly venerate technique. As long as a heavenly venerate did not appear, he feared no one. Should we wait here now or return immediately? Amu asked. They would definitely not be able to catch up to Dushi, so why wouldn't they just wait here for the heavenly venerate from the Martial Academy to arrive? By then, it would be fine for them to just travel with him back to the Martial Academy, and before that, they could also continue their cultivation here. Chapter 2710 Chapter 2712 Ma Feng Returns. Chapter 2710 Chapter 2712 Ma Feng Returns. 2710 Chapter 2712 Ma Feng Returns. Most of them would still continue cultivating here. After all, their goal was the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier, and they hadn't succeeded yet, had they? Besides, after being so stimulated by Ling Han, they wanted to advance to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier even more. Actually, Ling Han did not intend to stay here any longer. He had already advanced to the 9th heaven, and cultivated the Indestructible Divine Metal Physique. He didn't need any comprehension to become a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. He just needed to raise his cultivation level to the peak of the 9th heaven. Then, he would be able to directly charge towards becoming first-tier Heavenly Venerate. All he needed was simply time, not a dangerous environment. Furthermore, to Ling Han, this place could no longer be considered a dangerous place. He left, first to meet up with Wally and the large black dog, and then made his way back to the Martial Academy. However, this time he had indeed miscalculated. As the Martial Academy dispatched a second-tier Heavenly Venerate, it only took a few days for him to arrive at Burst Cloud Volcano, and when he learned that the crisis had been resolved, he returned to the Martial Academy at a much faster pace than Ling Han. Had Ling Han known earlier, he would have taken the opportunity to hitch a ride. Ling Han didn't mind either way, though. To him, a few years was not much different from a few days. He handed Desolate Moon over to the Martial Academy. Naturally, there would be someone to extract all the information from him regarding hysteria, and once everything was extracted, this kind of traitor would be executed. However, the second-tier Heavenly Venerate did not publicize Ling Han's battle achievements. A big shot like him naturally disdained to do so. Upon Amu and the others' return, news of it would naturally spread. He just allowed Ling Han to record a huge merit, and even gave Ling Han a death exemption gold medal, which would allow him to break the rules of the Martial Academy just once. In fact, Ling Han didn't care too much, for he already possessed the strength of a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. Once awarded the title of Heavenly Venerate, he would then be free from the constraints of regulations and be detached from the world. Ling Han stayed in the Martial Academy for a few days. Naturally, he would have matters to discuss with Yan Xianlu and the others. He also went to see Ji Wuming and Hu Furong. After so many years had passed, these two naturally made great progress, but he had already put a very wide gap between them and himself. However, in this great world, the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate tier was just the beginning, whereas 7th tier Heavenly Venerate was the real end goal. After staying for another 2 days, Ling Han intended to leave. First, he needed to make a trip to the Lin clan, and pick up the Empress before heading to the round battlefield. As for whether the Rain Emperor would be going or not, that would depend on his own desire. Pun! He hadn't set off yet when the door was forcibly smashed open. "Ling Han, get out!" a loud voice roared. Ling Han was surprised. Ever since he went on a killing spree and slaughtered many 9th Heaven celestial kings, everyone in the martial academy would address him as Senior Brother Ling whenever they saw him. Why would there be someone who would dare cause trouble at his doorstep? He went out, only to see a young man standing at the door with a menacing look. It was Ma Yuhai. Ling Han was surprised. Was this guy on drugs that he would dare come to provoke him? Ling Han couldn't help feeling amused. He slowly walked out and said, "Ma Yuhai, haven't you learned your lesson yet?" Ma Yuhai humphed. "Ling Han, don't think of yourself as someone so impressive. Today, I will teach you how to properly behave." Ling Han's eyes sharpened. Just based on Ma Yuhai's attitude towards him, even if he was to beat him half to death, it would be guaranteed that the Martial Academy also wouldn't pursue the matter. A Heavenly Venerate couldn't be humiliated. Ma Yuhai was immediately startled, and quickly took 3 steps back, saying, "I am warning you, don't act recklessly, as my father has returned from realm battlefield." Ling Han gave an "oh." It was no wonder then. Ma Yuhai's father, Ma Feng, was a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. With the support of such an elite, Ma Yuhai would naturally have no further reservations. Ling Han shook his head. "So that being the case, you think you can provoke me?" "Wrong!" Ma Yuhai pointed at Ling Han. "I'm giving you a chance. If you obediently apologize to me and let me beat you up, I will not mention anything regarding our dispute. Otherwise, you leave me no choice but to ask my father to interfere." When it came to the last sentence, his tone was full of threat. Ling Han was indeed impressive. He had killed 9th Heaven celestial kings with his sword, and even caused a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate to shed blood. However, He Yufeng was just a newly advanced Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. In terms of strength, could he be compared with Ma Feng, a veteran elite who had been fighting in the realm battlefield for countless years? Moreover, it wasn't that He Yufeng couldn't defeat Ling Han, but it was because Ling Han had used a powerful move which caused him to suffer a slight injury. His own strength actually surpassed Ling Han's by many-fold. Thus, he was definitely able to make Ling Han submit. Had it not been for the fact that there was the Lin clan supporting Ling Han, and that his own father was merely a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate, Ma Yuhai would really like to kill Ling Han. Ling Han chuckled, but nevertheless slapped him across the face. Ma Yuhai was immediately sent flying. For the sake of Ma Feng's many years of fighting courageously in the realm battlefield, Ling Han did not deliver a killing strike, leaving an heir for the Ma clan. Of course, if Ma Yuhai still didn't know any better, then Ling Han would no longer be merciful. Back then, when Ma Yuhai hired Qin Shuang to kill him, it was already enough for him to be given a death sentence. Within half a day, a message was released. Ma Feng made an announcement, demanding that Ling Han kneel all the way to Ma Yuhai's place by the end of today, or he would make his move. All of a sudden, the entire martial academy was shell-shocked. A Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate was going to deal with Ling Han. Ling Han should yield. That's right. When the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate makes a move, it's impossible to block his attack. After all, this isn't limited by an agreement of 10 moves as it was with He Yufeng. Who will support Ling Han this time? As long as it doesn't cause any fatality, the Martial Academy will not stop a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate either. They have to give him some face as well. Not necessarily. Haven't you heard that Ling Han has defeated a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate of the Yun clan, so even if he is to face Lord Ma Feng, he might not necessarily be at a disadvantage? You actually believe such rumors? That's right. Ling Han is only at the 8th heaven, how could he possibly rival the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate? Everyone had a completely pessimistic view of Ling Han's prospects. Even if there were one or two voices of opposition, they would still be drowned out instantly. Naturally, Ling Han had heard about it, and shook his head. Ma Feng really doted on his son. It was obviously impossible for him to go and apologize to Ma Yuhai. He simply ignored it completely. One day had passed, and the sun still rose. "Ling Han, come out!" A deep voice sounded from outside, full of intimidation. Ling Han was just meditating and cultivating. He was still far from reaching the peak of the 9th heaven, so there was huge room for improvement in his strength. Every moment was very precious to him. Hearing the voice, Ling Han stood up and came to the door. He saw a middle-aged man standing about 3 meters away from the door. He was wearing black battle armor, which appeared battered with many broken parts. However, one shouldn't underestimate this battle armor, as it was made of divine metal. Battle armor made with divine metal had so many broken parts. What kind of battles did this person have to go through? He was Ma Feng, who had just returned from the realm battlefield. The battles there would naturally be bloody. Ling Han cupped his fists in greeting. "So it's brother Ma." Ma Feng instantly raised a brow. How dared a mere 9th heaven celestial king treat him as an equal? It seemed that his son did not deceive him, and this brat was indeed extremely arrogant. "Young man, don't be so condescending just because you think you have some talent," Ma Feng said lightly. "I will not take it too far, and will simply break both your hands and feet, which you will not be recovering from for 100 million years, so you'd better reflect upon the error of your ways." You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.